I was serving in this role at the Greater Richmond Transit Company, I brought my board of directors to Charlotte to take a look at the cutting-edge solutions that Charlotte had invested in to deal with the challenge of on-street transfers. Little did I know that a couple decades later, I'd be standing in front of you tonight looking at the next generation of innovation that Charlotte will inevitably lead the way once again. So as you've heard from Ms. Dodson, we've been working on this project for quite some time. You heard earlier this summer about the opportunities that we have to integrate other development opportunities into this center. But at its inception, this began and will be based upon the solutions that we find for our mobility hub to replace the transit center. We're at the very beginning of what will be a long journey before we have a new solution on the ground for our customers. Right now, we are at what, from a transit standpoint, is figuring out what the locally preferred alternative, to use a federal term, but for us, what is the best option to move forward with along this progression. The current transit center, as it stands today, is the focal point of almost $2 billion worth of infrastructure investment. As was mentioned earlier, we have the original South Corridor of the Blue Line that opened in 2007. We opened the Blue Line extension, $1.2 billion investment in the spring of 2018, and phases 1 and phase 2 of the Gold Line. This is probably the greatest center point of transportation investment in the Southeast. So in the early 90s, this community came together to solve a transportation problem. Thousands of daily bus transfers taking place along Trade and Tryon Street. The dangerous interaction between pedestrians looking to transfer between buses on either side of the street, along with single occupant vehicles traveling along Trade and Tryon. Then you look towards a public-private innovative partnership that was developed then to solve a mobility challenge. Looking forward, we find ourselves once again at the intersection of a mobility challenge that we can look for innovative solutions to solve. But there have been those who have questioned the need for an uptown mobility hub. But when you look at the density of employment throughout the region, it is clear that Uptown remains the center of the universe as a destination point for transit riders. When you look at the sheer number of jobs that reside in Uptown and the density of those jobs, almost 50,000 jobs per square mile in Uptown, this will continue to be the #1 destination for transit riders now and into the future. I want to emphasize, we are not trying to just replace the current transit center. We are creating a new multimodal, multi-level mobility hub that meets the current and future needs of our customers and our community. The mobility landscape has changed over the years. We have shared mobility and ride-share companies, and transit agencies must increase the convenience, reliability, and frequency of services. An integrated mobility hub in a mixed-use development can serve today's needs with a keen eye towards the future. So the current issues with the transit center are not a transit problem. It's a design challenge to solve. And before I go a little more deeply into the evolution of the problem and then our opportunities for solving them, I'd like to bring Chrissy Exlin, who is the chair of our Transit Services Advisory Committee, to the podium to join in sharing her perspective, not only as a transit rider, but as a chair of our Transit TSAC, Transit Riders Committee. Ms. Exlin.
Chrissy, we're going to have to put you on payroll pretty soon here.
I know.
Tonight, Wednesday night.
I know, MTC too, yep. Thank you, Mr. Lewis and Mayor Lyles and members of council. My name is Chrissy Exlin. I'm the chair of the Transit Services Advisory Committee. We've heard presentations on the CTC redevelopment at numerous meetings. The most recent was this month's TSAC meeting, as well as in June. The members of TSAC live in Charlotte and in all of the towns in Mecklenburg County and use transit in a variety of ways. I'd like to share some of the concerns, questions, and suggestions that TSAC members have shared in our last 2 meetings where we talked about the redevelopment. There was a recommendation that there needs to be good wayfinding because with 3 different modes of transportation all coming together at CTC, you've got the blue line, which is elevated, you've got the gold line, which is at street level, and then you potentially would have the buses below street level, so you need to have good instructions for people to be able to connect. Another comment about whatever happens with the epicenter redevelopment, you need to have a good connection there to this transit hub. Regarding accessibility, we have a member who said it can be hard to find the right bus bay at CTC if you have visual impairment. There are black boxes with Braille on them on the different bus bays, but not everybody with visual impairment reads Braille, and sometimes the boxes are dirty. Additionally, if everyone coming in at street level needs to go down to the buses and vice versa, back up, stairs isn't going to cut it for everybody. So we need to have escalators, elevators, all manner of getting up and down. Speaking of stairs, a lot of people use their bike and then connect with a bus. They need to be able to get their bike down to the buses and back up. That could be as simple as building runnels, which is like a channel that you can, push your bike up a set of stairs or maybe a ramp. That is a way that people use the transit system. We had one member express concern about crime and safety if CTC was underground, emphasizing that it's important to have sufficient lighting and security presence. Another concern that's been raised is that if there's a temporary transit center set up across the street for the years that it will take to build the new CTC, how would that construction impede access in and out of the temporary transit center, buses going in and out, people going in and out. Another concern that was shared was whether as Uptown continues to grow, the edges of central Charlotte are growing. And so it can be, like, for example, I work at, where the Observer used to be, and that's about a 2/3 mile walk from CTC. It's a bit of a haul in the summer when it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity in the morning. So as Charlotte continues to grow from the center, bringing everyone into one point, there needs to be consideration that not everybody is crazy like me and will walk 2/3 of a mile because we believe in taking the bus. Some other comments were that building so much parking in the structure is counterproductive to Charlotte's ambitious 50% mode share goal. When you build a lot of parking, you encourage people to keep driving instead of using transit or other methods of transportation. And the last concern I jotted down was just the interplay between public and private space. There needs to be a thoughtful balance in restricting access to the transit center. It's public transportation. One solution, if you're going to require, say, proof of fare payment to go into certain areas versus providing public amenities like restrooms and places to sit, you really have to think about how that balances out. You don't want to make a public space private and vice versa, and consider the layout of the space, policies for using the space, and how security teams interact with the public. Like I said, I myself have been taking the number 9 bus down Central Avenue for the last 5 years. I spent a lot of time at CTC. As a regular bus rider, I would appreciate a transit center that's climate controlled, so you're not in the freezing cold in the winter, you're not out in the blazing heat in the summer. It's nice to not have to breathe, it would be nice to not have to breathe in diesel fumes and cigarette smoke while you're waiting for a bus, and for it to be well lit at night and plenty of clean places to sit while you're waiting for a bus. Wayfinding, again, the Cats Pass app is really great at figuring out how to get where you're going. But if you're going somewhere you've never been before, it's also good to have old-fashioned printed maps in the station to figure out where can I go on Cats. Finally, I would encourage each of you on council to spend a day using only public transportation to get around and experience CTC firsthand for yourself. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Excellent. We've spent, as staff and the project team, a lot of time over the last several months defining what the challenge and what the problem is as we move into defining what the solution to that may be. And I think you've heard from our Transit Service Advisory Committee what their day in and day out challenges are with our current system. And so thinking towards taking in that input and designing a solution that takes into consideration the customer's experience is paramount in our mission moving forward. And so some of the, just wanted to put a photo to some of the concerns and opportunities that we heard from our transit riders. When we look at this system that was built in 1995, when we were only a bus, we were a bus-only transit system. So this was built to serve our bus riders. You've heard since then, we've added the Gold Line, we've added the Blue Line, but you see the interactions that we still have. We've eliminated the interactions with single occupant vehicles along that, but as you can see, we still require our customers to cross from one side of the facility to another in lanes of traffic where buses can be ingressing or egressing. From a design standpoint, as we have retrofitted the facility to connect to the Blue Line, we still have some challenges from an accessibility standpoint, but also from wayfinding and comfort. You hear about the stairs that many of our customers have to use to get from the Blue Line down to the Gold Line or the bus center. And these are opportunities for us to solve challenges for our customers into the future. Looking at it from a community standpoint, there's no active street frontage. In fact, and many times during the day, this entire street front would be covered with buses who are also waiting to provide connectivity for our customers. And so looking forward, we want to develop a fully integrated uptown mobility hub with a redevelopment opportunity while we're respecting the needs of our transit customers and outlining the goals that must be met. We're in problem-solving mode right now. We've identified some challenges to solve. Now we have to find the best possible solution. And in that solution is identifying what our goals will be. We need to elevate the transit experience for our customers. The current transit center is not adopted and we are unable to adapt the current transit center to the future mobility needs of our community. And at times, the current center can be a hindrance to transit utilization. Before redevelopment proposal advances, a temporary transit center must be secured. How do we minimize pedestrian, automobile, and bus conflicts and create a more comfortable, climate-controlled transit experience? As you've heard from Ms. Exlin, even though the current transit center is covered, when it's hot outside, it's hot in the transit center. When it's cold outside, it's cold in the transit center. And that's a problem we have to solve for our customers. And in that, we will create a multi-level, multimodal transit facility that meets the needs of our customers from a comfort standpoint, an amenity standpoint, and an ease of utilization. And so in doing that, we took advantage of a unique opportunity. We received an unsolicited proposal to develop the Charlotte Transit Center from a Greensboro developer. Following mandated FTA regulations for responding to unsolicited proposals, we had to evaluate first, did it meet a pressing need for CATs? And if it did, how do we encourage competition? And so we set out a formal request for proposals in June of 2019, and we received 3 proposals that were submitted as a part of this solicitation. And we chose the Charlotte-based White Point Partners and Dart Interests, a Dallas real estate investment firm. One of the key aspects of that choice was how we solve the problem of creating an opportunity to continue our mobility services for our customers while at the same time figuring out whether we redevelop the transit center, we retrofit it, or we take it down and start anew. This really came to a head during our preparations for the Republican National Convention. As a part of that convention requirements leading up to it, we were required by the Department of Homeland Security to close down the current transit center leading up to the event and throughout the schedule of the event. If you look back to 2012, when we hosted the Democratic National Convention, we closed down the transit center, but we relocated transit activities to what is now Romare Bearden Park. If we fast forward to what that looks like now, not only is the park there, but you have the baseball diamond and you have a great deal of development that has sprung up in the area. When we were looking for our operational plan for the Republican National Convention, we couldn't find a location within the 277 loop that we could relocate our transit activity. We would have had to have moved that to South End and then bus in our customers to Center City. So the development team having the opportunity and controlling the property immediately adjacent to the current transit center solved both problems for us. Gave us an opportunity to look seriously at a future transit center that met our mobility needs into the future, but also utilizing the property across the street that they controlled allowed us to build a temporary transit facility that still had easy connections to the Blue Line and the Gold Line. So looking forward, again, as I mentioned, we're in the problem-solving phase. Developing an integrated transit facility with multiple modes and levels of mobility options, this will no longer just be a bus facility, but a fully integrated mobility hub. Just how development in South End has become centered on transit-oriented development, and we've become a national leader in that space. We now have the opportunity to bring that experience into Uptown. With that, I'm going to introduce Peter Cavalluzzi, who's with the design team, who is an architectural expert on design and integration of transit-oriented development. Peter?
Thank you, John. My name, again, is Peter Cavalluzzi. I'm a design principal with Perkins Eastman, and I represent a design and engineering team that includes Kimley Horn, whose members are with us here tonight to answer questions. And I just wanted to start to say that our mission so far has been to help really set the table for this moment and really do a lot of research and study so that we can arrive at the solution that's tailor-made for this moment, for this location, for this transit rider community. And so I'm going to show you some of the analysis that we've started doing and will continue to do as we move forward to make sure, again, that this is a world-class, vertically integrated, mixed-use transit facility tailor-made for this location. So some of the key goals that we focused on as we started our analysis and our study, of course, we want to have a very efficient and optimized transit network that works with the existing transit facilities that are in the area, the Blue Line, the Gold Line, and the existing bus routing. So we're focused on what exists and how we can extend and enhance what already exists from a transit standpoint. We're also always focused on cost-efficient solutions, both in terms of construction as well as in terms of operation and circulation. So that's always a key theme with all of the options and ideas that we're going to be considering here. We also want to tie together really what has already been invested in this area. This location is really in the heart of downtown Charlotte. We've got the Spectrum Center, we've got NASCAR, we've got the Convention Center, we've got Trade and Tryon, a whole host of tremendous assets in the downtown area. In this vertically integrated facility can be the glue that brings it all together. And so we really have a high bar that we're trying to achieve with this facility to maximize the transit rider experience, but also make it something that helps build the city. And then, of course, effective use of the real estate. There's limited land, particularly in this location. There's a lot of land to the south, but right in the heart of the city, we got to be sure that we're using the real estate assets to their greatest effectiveness. And then, of course, working with John and his teams to make sure that we're meeting all of the transit criteria of CATS so that we have a state-of-the-art facility that will really propel transportation into the future. This is just a sort of a quick overview of a few options that we've looked at as part of our analysis and study. And you can see here that these layouts are really more engineering diagrams that show the geometry, the circulation, the access points for passengers. And so we've studied a whole host of options to be sure that we have left really no stone unturned in terms of how we can create the best possible facility in this location. And we've arrived really at a series of options that really maximize the existing context. As John had said, when this transit facility opened as a bus facility, a single-use facility, that's all there was in this location. But today, we actually have two new transit lines. We have the trail, we have microtransit, we have vehicular access. So it really is a multi-level transportation hub, and it's not just a single-use bus facility. And then, of course, we want to reinforce the neighborhood around us, focusing on trade and Brevard, allowing Brevard to be that connecting street between NASCAR, Convention Center, and the Spectrum Center and this site, as well as connecting into the downtown. And of course, bringing together all the different modes in this one location. It's really truly a unique kind of condition here within the city of Charlotte, and we want to be sure that we take advantage of that opportunity. We've also done a lot of engineering studies in terms of how the buses operate so that they have the proper turning movements, so that they board and alight passengers in a safe and comfortable way. And so these are just some of the diagrams that illustrate the level of sort of research and study that we're doing to be sure that this can become a state-of-the-art facility in the future. We also looked at the existing traffic circulation, the existing street network, to be sure that we were looking ahead to the future circulation of both private vehicles as well as transportation, to be sure we had a clean and efficient transportation network that where buses come into the property doesn't conflict with other circulation systems and pedestrian circulation that's coming to the site. So we sort of arrived at three basic options that we think are promising, and they exist in, one is at street level, and we show two platforms in the street level, and of course, this one has the benefit of being directly at the street, but also has the challenge of passengers crossing the busway to get to the boarding platforms unless you create a bridge from a second level that brings passengers into the facility. We have another option that's above grade that we call the terrace, and you can see with that we're able to develop a single platform, but it also entails bridging over 3rd Street, which creates perhaps not most ideal sort of pedestrian condition on 3rd Street, where you have an overbuild crossing the street, and then you have the light rail line, so it'd be a fairly extended kind of covered area of the street. And then you can also see the ramps that are required to bring the buses up to that terrace level. And then the third one we're looking at is what we're calling the concourse. Concourse is a transit name. It's a very common name in the transit world, and this one is below the street level. And one of the things that we have to be sure that we have seamless connection between the different levels of transit at this site, but also one of the very promising things about this is it has a single, you see that single square platform that we can control, we can have conditioned, and it's a much better circulation for the transit rider in terms of the walking distance between buses. So each one of these has different pluses and minuses, and as we go forward with the outreach with CATS and the stakeholders groups, we'll bounce these ideas off of the various stakeholders and operators and various other stakeholders to be sure that we have the proper solution.
Thank you, Peter. Now that we have 3 options to move forward with, we plan to engage the... Yeah. Now that we have 3 options to further evaluate, we plan to engage the public and stakeholders on the best option that meets the goals of our transit customers and the aspirational mobility visions of Envision My Ride and the 2030 Transit System Plan. So how are we going to evaluate these options moving forward? With a series of goals that we've outlined, that we've heard from our Transit Service Advisory Group, passenger-first design must be preeminent. We have to have a design that is safe, secure, and climate controlled, reduce the bus route circulation on the surrounding streets, incorporate our public and continued stakeholder input, and maximize the development potential above or around the actual center. And so over the next month, we're going to be out talking with the public, both our current riders. We'll be at the CTC. We're going to have virtual public meetings. We will continue our discussions with our Transit Service Advisory Committee. We'll have some some public meetings here at Government Center, and we'll be back once again at the end of the month at the Transit Center, continuing to take in the input, the concerns, the opportunities that we hear from our transit riders. I also want to reiterate, we're at the beginning of a long stage of work. We're at the very beginning of choosing what is the option that we will move forward with into design. Think about this from, we've talked to you about moving the Silver Line forward, the Blue Line extension in the past. We're at that, using that federal term of figuring out what the locally preferred alternative is that we will then take in to a deeper level of design. And from a council standpoint, we're here. Here's our presentation today to council members. Over the next month, we will continue with our public outreach and stakeholder engagement. We'll be anticipate meeting with the Transportation Planning and Development Committee, and then come back to full council with the input that we've heard from our riders and the general public, hone down further evaluation of the options, and then move forward with a single option into that next stage of development. So, Mayor, members of council, that'll conclude the presentation this evening. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to address those.
All right, we'll start with Ms. Ajmer, and we'll go around as council members would like to have questions or comments or even ideas and suggestions for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions for you, Mr. Lewis. With a couple of weeks ago, Steve Harrison wrote about the design and how the vendor was chosen and how that could be a potential conflict of interest because it's the firm that is a sister company of the one that will be potentially developing this. Could you please elaborate on that and how we would be ensured that this will be an objective process throughout?
Well, I'm not familiar with the potential conflict of interest, so I'm going to leave that aside, but I will assure you that this procurement process followed every step of the mandated federal transportation requirements for how we as transit agencies receive unsolicited proposals and then how we solicit a competition in that. As I mentioned in the presentation, it was we received an unsolicited proposal from a third party. We then went out to ask for competing bids. We received 3, and we went through a normal solicitation process of evaluating those proposals and making a choice on the one we wanted to move forward with.
So I just wanted to follow up on that. So there are two parties. One is the vendor that submitted a proposal for development, and one who is actually helping us assess the options, whether we will have the transit center underground, at the grade level, or some other location. Are you following?
Yes, I'm following. So you're saying we have a proposal that was submitted by the development team. The evaluation is being done by CAT's third party.
So it's not being done by the
developer is
development.
not doing the evaluation. We have engaged our own consultants to help us work through the evaluation.
Got it. Okay, that helps address my concern. If you could go back to the slide where those three options are. I will have further questions on this, and I can connect offline with you on this. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
There has been some kind of comment around what's appropriate or legal. We have a transit attorney that works in CATS and Mr. Baker on Mr. Baker's team, and I think we ought to address anything that looks like or is implied with impropriety. So, Mr. Baker, can you follow up on Ms. Ashmira's and give us a written statement about this? It's not cool to have people saying things that we assume. So let's check it in with our CATS attorney that addresses federal and state law.
So are you all aware of the article that I'm referring to?
I'm personally not, but I've not spoken with Mr. Thomas or a member of his team. I'm sure they are.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah,
Ms.
I mean, if there is no, I just want to make sure that media has the right information. So,
I
Right,
certainly understand the question and will provide a response
Okay.
to the entire council.
okay, thank you.
thank you. Ms. Molina?
Feel like Jay-Z over here. Is my mic on? I just want a little bit more information around the levels that we're currently discussing, because there's a constituent in particular that I have in mind who is 100% CATS writer, who I speak to a lot to kind of get a gauge of what that experience is like, because of course, many of us don't dedicate ourselves to, using our transit options 100% of the time. And so what I've heard at, I guess, a constituent level is the belief system is that, the bus system is kind of hiding the poor from sight. Can you speak to that?
With the current transit center
Oh,
or
with
with
the
one of the?
proposed.
Sure. So I think there has been I think a jump to conclusion that we've already chosen one alignment or the other. We're at the point we have multiple options that we can move forward with. We're going to take those options to the public, and we're going to allow the information we receive to lead us in the right direction. As you heard from Peter, each one of these designs has pros and cons in it. We need to get more information from our transit riders to understand what is it they're looking for in that next generation mobility hub. How do we integrate between three different modes at three different levels? The blue line is elevated, the gold line is at street level, and so is bus. How do we create a seamless connection for our customers? And the best way to do that is to talk to our customers, get their input, and then put their input into the design of our potential solution. And when we do that, we'll then come back, check again to make sure that we've met their expectations. That's why when I put up the timeline of the project, we are just at the very beginning. So we have a long ways to go, and an important aspect of that is hearing from our users.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And so again, this is new for most of us outside of, that particular area. So I guess the only thing I would say is I'm really interested in seeing what the feedback is from our constituency to say, how they feel about it, what input they have, because, I remember what, I'm sorry, I'm at a loss of names for the young lady who came and spoke and brought some of the concerns?
Yes, Miss Excellent.
Okay, yeah, so one of the other people that I spoke to prior to this meeting as well who raised a concern was about the temperatures that you mentioned, which that's a heavy concern about the temperature. If it's hot outside, it's boiling inside of the transit area, when it's cold. So just to kind of, echo and lift up that as a concern as well, that was brought to me as a, servant leader from my particular community and the people who I speak to, that's something that I feel like will be heavy with feedback.
Agreed. I think one thing in our early interactions with our riders, the one current theme is we've got to have a climate-controlled facility.
Yeah, I agree. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. John, thank you, but I have a question for Peter. Peter, do you mind, in his one slide, it's the slide to have all 6 of the options? Say many options studied? Nope.
Sorry. A little review of everything here.
There you go. Thank you, sir. So the ones that are in dotted, have dotted lines around, are those, was that the semifinal list?
Yeah, this was just I guess a selection of options that we looked at. We actually looked at even more than this.
Okay.
And just to illustrate the process to you, we said, let's show a half a dozen, and then let's zero in on 3 distinctly different options that we will now go forward and study. And so that's why we circled them. And then the next slide, whoops, next slide is that series of options. Whoops, right there. So the ones that are circled are these,
Got it.
okay?
And so, John and staff, you could, can you, I think each one of these slides are great, but the detail is so small. So can we get maybe, 11 by 17 or of each one, just so, because the citizens are going to ask us some details and about each one, I think would be helpful. On the temporary location, what is our goal for that to be, how long will that exist, a temporary location?
So I think we can expect to be operating in the temporary. Now, it all depends on what the actual construction will look like on the main block, but I would expect we'd be on that temporary spot for anywhere from 24 to 36 months.
Okay.
So it's got to be a robust
Gotcha.
center.
And last thing, I'm dating myself, but some of us have been around a long time, and we went out to Denver to had a chance to see the Denver multi-modem. So how does it relate to that one? Because that particular time, the Denver model was the one that everybody said, this is how you need to build your multi-transit system. So how does this compare to that model?
So a little different, but I think at a broad level, if you want to compare the options, the concourse would be closest to what we saw in Denver a number of years ago.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I just have 2 questions. The temporary location, is access to that temporary location contingent on us selecting a certain vendor? Does that vendor that we are looking to go with, do they have control of that temporary location, or is the temporary location kind of a separate?
No, the temporary location is owned and controlled by this development team.
Okay. And then secondly, are we looking at a level or a space in in the transportation center for ride share drop-offs?
The new concept would be designed to meet not just current modes, but have the capability to provide access to future modes, ride share, scooters, electric bikes, and who knows what will be in the next 10 years.
Flying cars? Right, there you go. I was a Jetsons watch. It's coming. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start with Ms. Watlington and come down the side, and then we'll end up coming down this way somewhere.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. So the first one, well, I'll start with this slide here, just so I'm clear. This one that's the apparent leading option, this terrace, I realize that you haven't said that, but just based on the, looking at the pros and cons of that slide, can y'all hear me?
No. I think your
I can, I
batteries-
don't know if you're on the mic.
Appreciate that, my favorite city attorney. This middle option, the terrace, just for clarity, is this option and each of these others only at one level? If the main concern that we've heard so far from the community is about being underground, I just want to make sure I understand as we're looking at these aerial views, which one of these options includes the underground
So
component?
we have all three options to look at. We have street level, which would be essentially rebuilding what you see today
Okay.
at the transit center. We have a terrace level, which would put the new center at the same level that the blue line is. So above street level, but level with the blue line. And then we have the concourse, which would be below grade.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. The other questions that I have are broader to the transit station, so to the extent that they venture over into other topics, we can talk about that or not. But my first question is, as we think about how these options, the physical structure relates to our overall goals of increasing ridership, are there particular things about these options, or I'll ask it differently, how was the increased utilization of the transportation system as a whole layered into the feasibility analysis?
Sure. Well, I think number one in that is customer experience. We have heard a number of impediments to transit usage from our current riders. It's hot, just temperature was the one theme that we've heard from everyday riders to infrequent riders. While the current transit center is undercover, you're protected from snow and rain. It's hotter inside the transit center than it is outside the transit center. When it's cold, it is cold in the transit center. So we're not providing that basic level of comfort to our riders, and that is something that they are looking for. Now, there are lots of variations on that we have to figure out as we continue with design, but taking in customer experience was number one in that evaluation, and will continue to be.
Thank you. And then the other question I had was about, I saw a slide in there about multiple uses. Are there any plans to incorporate the arts and small-scale retail and those kinds of things in the transit center so that I know you talked about the street frontage, but how are we utilizing the space inside to create some kind of destination, if you will?
Well, I will say, number one, CATS has always had art in transit as a primary goal of that. If you look at our Blue Line extension, how we design our stations on the Gold Line, the utilization of local artists in the station design has always been a part of our delivery. And so that will continue to be. When you're talking about amenities, I think that is not just about what amenities are offered within our transit space, but what amenities are offered throughout the development. And so we have an opportunity to meet the expectations of our customers in a very different way moving forward.
Awesome. And then my last question is really more about your opening slides. You were setting the stage about Uptown really still being the center of
Yes.
transit. How has the change in remote work and the idea of people commuting from outside of the county, so thereby not getting on a bus to get to Uptown, how has that informed the feasibility analysis?
Sure. So I think, number one, we have some trends analysis. I would not say that we have the answer moving forward, but I do think when looking at our ridership over the last 6 months, our rail ridership continues to grow. Our bus ridership is coming back slower than rail, but I think rail has always led the way because of the reliability, the comfort of that our rail system provides. And so I would say that while this center will be, the final solution will be smaller than what it is today as a result of that reality, but also our goal of decentralizing our mobility hubs, that it will look a lot different than it does today. But I think the story of transit's demise has been greatly exaggerated. If you look at our Blue Line trains between 7 and 8:30 a.m., it's standing room only. So I think as the community comes back to workplace, whether that's part-time or a couple of days a week, when people are coming into Uptown, they're using transit.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate the sustainability aspect of the design, both from the building and as well as with the fleet. So thank you for including that. Given that the lifespan of this CTC will be with the city for decades, I'd really like for us to also think about how technology will play within this building, both from a user experience, a ridership, but also how technology is integrated within the actual facility as well. So that's the first thing.
Okay, now, Mr. Bakari has started
I've
smiling
waited for
from
5
ear to
years for
ear.
someone else to say that. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Sorry I didn't see you back there, making faces. So that's my first point, and I did see from a timeline perspective where you're going into the design phase, but I would really like for it to be a pillar of every time you do a readout on a CTC, what's going on with technology, how's it integrated, how can we help as a body to inform that. And then the last piece I'd say is, I appreciate your comment about using multimodal drop-off areas and thinking about that, but I'm very big on beginning with the end in mind and thinking 40, 50 years out, right? I mean, this center is going to have a few decades out, and what's our opportunity to right-size the CTC so that we can embrace those changes as they come down the line.
I think those are all great points, and that's something that we've got to continue to keep at the forefront of mind as we continue on with this design of this mobility center.
Thank you.
all right, Mr. Bakari?
Thank you. Mr. Manager, I think this is an opportunity for us to start thinking differently. And, when you look at all the challenges we're facing, I don't see a compelling reason why we would even keep this Uptown. Now, I know there's challenges in the deck. You're going to see Uptown has these big bars up there. 2 points I'd say is, yes, we understand Uptown is a major employment center, even if these are 2009 numbers, which we probably should get refreshed numbers if we're making strategic decisions like this. But there's an opportunity for us to create this the right way, and trying to jam it into an evolved place of density with the challenges that we experience around there isn't fair to the riders. It's not fair to the economic development around the area. And if you look up the north side of the Blue Line, there are opportunities around there, ones that we could have had 20 years ago if we had thought forward enough around the south side of the Blue Line. So I don't think there's any compelling reason for us right now, particularly at a time Uptown where we're trying to re-jumpstart an engine, and there are all kinds of problems that we need to somehow create a magic bullet that solves this inside there. I think we can just as easily figure out with last mile connectivity with the Blue Line itself to redesign this in a way where we have a blank slate and a canvas. And I just go back to, our mission, our core mission here is moving people. And right now we've got a spot that's a central hub with a lot of stuff to do, and there's a lot of hanging out and a lot of, well, I'm going to go through here, and it just creates this environment where if we get back to our basics, this is about moving people as quickly as we possibly can to get to their destination. And if we keep that goal in mind, I don't see any way that we would continue trying to say, is this going underground or above ground or whatever. I think we would say, let's let that be that and figure out how to solve a moving people problem separately somewhere outside of the Uptown area.
All right. Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mitchell, the Denver thing, we can talk offline, very different, okay? Remember, it was large scale, there was a tax involved, there were a lot of commitments from private investors to occupy the whole area, so different story. Question on this, if we do levels, the first two of those, where are the buses temporarily while the work is going on at those locations? Because in the third one, we have a temporary bus facility next door, but we do not, or at least it's not clear that we do for the other two.
They
How does
are,
that work?
so if you look at the street level, it's the same design as in the concourse directly across the street.
All right, so it's just not marked the same way as the
Maybe-
concourse picture.
If I can, this would be the temporary
It's the same.
location. Bus
And then
facility
for
here,
terrace,
And then the same in the terrace.
all right. The concourse solution, is that equivalent to the tower? I mean, is there necessarily a tower associated with the concourse solution?
Are you talking about the rest of the development, the private
the
development?
tower, yeah,
I think I'll use your term, the tower, would be involved in all three of those options. So what we're trying to attempt, no matter which option comes out at the end of the evaluation, is creating an opportunity for development above.
So the White Point proposal did include a tower, as I'm calling it, right? And are all of the options we're even thinking about anymore also tower alternatives? So are we going down the road of the P3 under each of these? Have we excluded the possibility of not doing that?
All of these options include a P3 private development. Yes, sir.
All right, so, all right. I don't know whether all of us agree that we had actually decided to commit to that. I thought that we had heard about a possibility of the tower thing, and we said, okay, let's keep talking. And now it sounds as if we're not being offered anything that doesn't involve a tower. The timeline that you put up, is that the same for all of these options?
Generally, yes, sir.
Who are the consultants that we're using for the evaluation?
So we have on our staff is Kimley Horn.
Perkins Eastman and Kimley Horn.
Perkins Eastman and Kimley Horn is on the CAT side of the equation.
Right, and those are outside consultants? Or
Those
they-
are outside consultants,
All right.
yes.
And, you know, critically, our decision about this is going to depend on cost estimates. So where, as we proceed along the deliberation, do we start to hear about what the differences are in the money associated?
Well, I think just like all of our transit projects, the further we get along in design, the more refined our cost will be. We're very back of the napkin at this point, at the conceptual phase, and as we continue with design, we'll get much more refined costs.
And would it be fair to say that there are going to be substantial differences in the costs depending on which of these solutions we pursue?
I do not know that at this point, sir.
I think it ought to be possible to conclude that. I think the concourse underground solution is a whole different engineering proposition. So I wish we could get some sort of handle on what kind of commitments we're talking about. And also, I think as we move down this road, if we are now in a mode of only thinking about a P3, I'm very interested to hear more about how that's going to work. You know, we talking about TIGs. What exactly are the terms of that partnership? And I say that because a lot of people come to Charlotte, they buy a piece of land and they put up a building, and they do it without any help from us. And so as we proceed, we need to be careful about protecting the financial interests of the city and making sure that we don't enter into an arrangement with the private sector partners that basically eases their path forward and creates a lot of costs for us. Thank you.
Understood.
All right, thank you. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. John, thank you for the presentation. Just want to kind of follow up with Councilmember Bakari's comments because I kind of wrote the same thing in my notes in reference to were there other sites identified before we went back to the existing site? And we also talked about the intermodal station. How does that kind of fit into what we're trying to do? And you might want to explain the intermodal station to some of the newer members.
If we take a step back and we go back into our entire Envision My Ride plan, that was based on the first foundation of that plan was redesigning our bus system from that hub and spoke, which forced people to come into Uptown, even though they didn't need to more of a grid system. We have done that. The next phase is how do we redesign our mobility hubs? Right now, since we've built out the Blue Line, all 26 stations are potential mobility hubs, and they provide opportunities for crosstown transfers without coming into Uptown. But at the end of the day, the numbers are what they are. The majority of our riders today, their destination is somewhere within the 277 loop. And so when you look at the design of our station with the new mobility hub at the transit center in close proximity to $2 billion worth of investment, we put the Blue Line there for a reason. We intersected the Gold Line there for a reason. And it could be that the Silver Line will come in to this location. That's where our riders want to go. And so we have to take that into consideration in our future design. We're looking forward to the next, 40 years. We look back at what was cutting edge in 1995. As I said, I brought my board here to see the fantastic work we're doing now. Back then, we have that opportunity to look forward, recognizing technology has changed, mobility options have changed. We have to take that changing transportation universe and incorporate it into our mobility hubs moving forward.
The intermodal station and the relationship between the two once it's built in, I mean, obviously they're both transit stations and transports, but could you kind of talk a little bit
So
about
as an
that?
example, our goal when the Gateway Station is constructed, that most of our express routes will meet their transfers there. So we're pushing that away from the current transit center out to the Gateway Center. This new mobility hub will be more local bus oriented, but once again, we're still pushing out transfer activity at all of our rail stations. And so only those who are coming down. Right now, when you are looking at the current transit center and the outside bays, we have 32 bays there. We're looking at this one to be in that 14 bay realm. But those that will be taking our bus service and connecting to Gold Line and Blue Line, Uptown is still the major destination.
And one last question, in reference to, obviously, this is a transit project, first and foremost, and that's something that we talked about on our small group meetings. But tell me, how does the building interface with its neighbors, right? The arena, the hopefully redeveloped Epic Center, et cetera, because it is a tight spot, right? And so how does it interface with its neighbors?
So I think, number one, that is a very important goal that our design team has to meet, not only in solving the transit challenges, but then how do we interact with our neighbors? We're not at a point now where I can, intelligently give you examples of that, but I think that is one of our top goals moving forward. And as we continue with the design, choose an option, move forward with greater design, those questions will be answered as we move to that point.
Got it.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Lewis, you just shared that basically CATS by design has created where the riders will want to go. You gave a perfect example of pushing out the transfer activity center. When we look back over the last few years and look at where ridership was eliminated and or reduced, and we look at the numbers that are presented that saying the majority of our ridership is coming into Uptown, the concern that I have is through previous adjustments in ridership, we have now created the opportunity to say today, for what we're attempting to do, the majority of the ridership is coming in Uptown. You gave a partial example of multiple locations, many options studied. was there even an option that was studied that looked outside of Uptown utilizing some of the current land that the city owns?
So when you're saying, was there an option, are you saying, was there an option studied to move, to relocate the transit center outside of Uptown?
Yes.
The answer to that is no. And the reason why is because, as I brought up the example of the RNC, again, when a large number of your riders want to come to Uptown, forcing them to go to South End or NODA, and then having to somehow take another transfer to get to their final destination, the more times we insert transfers, the less attractive our service becomes. And so the inception of Envision My Ride was to lower the number of transfers, and destination is an important part of that. We want to minimize our transfers, but we can't eliminate transfers. We will never be able to get everyone to their location in a one-seat ride. And so recognizing that, we have to have our transfer facilities as close to where people want to get to as possible.
So, and it could just be my interpretation, I heard a conflict and a contradiction in that, in the sense of, if we're saying that we are having real conversations about pushing out those that are transferring, that's adding another step into that ride. You also stated that based on the numbers that you're looking at now, the numbers show that overwhelmingly a large number of the riders are coming into Uptown. What you did not provide is a snapshot of what the ridership once looked like even in the last 7 years, because we have a lot of residents that are outside and utilize our public transportation system that are not coming into Uptown. A lot of those individuals in those community routes that once were have been eliminated or been realigned to some other route. The challenge that I have is, as we're moving forward, it really still feels like we're doing the same thing, just putting a new price tag on it. If this is an opportunity for Charlotte to once again be the leader in a mobility discussion, it would be helpful in the many options that were studied if there was a real level of interest and energy put into, if it was not in Uptown, what would that look like for connectivity, recognizing that we are a city, county of over 1 million residents, and the handful that are coming in Uptown are not a total reflection of those who once utilized CATS that are no longer able to utilize it because it's no longer convenient, or those who are still interested in utilizing it. It would just be helpful to have the opportunity to really look at a comparison versus here's the decision that we've already made, and here's the 3 design options based on that decision. Here are the options of what we know to be utilized, taking in account that we, meaning CATS leadership, has redefined and realigned a number of the routes, and that has contributed to the fact that we now are saying the majority of the ridership is coming into Uptown. It would just be helpful to have as much information as possible.
Sure.
So that when we are making our decision, we can go back to our constituents, whether they live off Mount Holly, Huntersville Road and trying to get through Uptown, not coming to Uptown. If I'm living out there and I need to go to work at South Park, this isn't necessarily going to help. But there is a possibility that routes that have been realigned over the years, we might be able to go back and assist those residents that have faced a lot of challenges when we talk about access and mobility issues.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. I have Mr. Winston.
Can I do one thing to maybe
Yes,
help
please.
John?
Yes.
So, John, I think that, and I understand what this presentation is about. With that said, Envision My Ride is what we're hanging our hat on as it relates to, if I have this right, a transit system, bus system, that allows for more frequencies and a better experience. And so I think what would be helpful for some of the questions that have come out tonight is that how does a centralized transfer center help with Envision My Ride versus if the transfer center was not in Uptown? Could that be helpful or could it be hurtful, if that's the right term? So that's what I think I'm hearing from some of the council members.
And I'm going to add to what the manager said. We haven't seen the hub network completely, which is like how people move around. And so having that kind of, the hubs that are all out there, as Ms. Mayfield said, you might want to be on Steel Creek and get into South Park. Do we have that already happening, or would we have to create it? So those are the things. So we have our Mayor Pro Tem, and then we do have, we're going to be a little bit late because it's 6:13 now but we're going to go ahead and have the arts and culture presentation this evening too.
Thank you. A comment that I have, I think it's a good job engaging TSAC and private citizens in this conversation. It's something that council has asked to better align the work of our committees in our decision-making. So that was a pleasant surprise for me. And I'd like, for you guys to stay engaged in this process. I think it gives us, some level setting, and it also probably can help us to reach out to more people in our community as we help facilitate, those public conversations. Something that was brought up during that presentation, is that, and I think it might be in alignment with the question that Mr. Jones just posed. How are we thinking of building first and last mile connections into any of these designs? I've heard it kind of proposed a couple of different ways, whether it's technology, but I really do think what I'm asking about is how is it going to kind of interact with different waypoints within the Uptown area, right? How are you going to move people to and from, the new transit center? How are we thinking about that?
So I think one thing that is a key plank of the Envision My Ride plan is our bus priority study. And that is a very detailed plan of how we incorporate these smaller mobility hubs, utilizing our rail stations, and also folding that in with first and last mile micro transit options. A 40-foot bus or a light rail train cannot be the solution to everyone's mobility needs. And so while we have to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of our transit system, and with our bus and train being the spine, there are other opportunities for us to incorporate new technology, new modes to provide a variety of solutions to our customers. And all of that is outlined in our bus priority study in the Envision My Ride, and we'd be happy to come back or come to transportation and planning once again to really delve deeper into that plan.
Absolutely. It does feel like council is going to want to have, know how we're going to move people to and from some of the high traffic locations in Uptown from this investment. I do believe that this investment partially will be paid for by a federal raise grant, $15 million.
That's correct. We received a $15 million raise grant for this.
Are there any timeline constraints with that? And if so, I think it was, again, it was part of, I heard at least one of my colleagues ask about timeline and spend and how that works out.
Sure. So as a condition of the raise grant, there are certain federal milestones that we will have to meet, and we have done our best to incorporate that into the timeline that we have. And so reaching a decision on a preferred alternative and then moving into design is important to staying on track with that.
And my last question actually might be for Mr. Hudson, actually. So we've seen in other plans and other kind of ideations of center city plans that there was this idea of a Brevard Street kind of plaza, entertainment district, pedestrian walkable place. At least from the slides that we've been presented here, it seems like Brevard is going to be in some, if I'm reading this right, even kind of a two-way access point to this CTC. Is that an inference, a correct inference that I'm drawing? And is that going to preclude the kind of pedestrian-centric development that, have been thought to be seen on Brevard Street?
So I'll start with this, and you might want to add in. I think as we've looked at all of these concepts, we have considered that plan and that vision that has been out there for a very long time, probably about 20 years, I think, of Brevard Street becoming like this festival street, if you will. So we thought and had a lot of conversation about how do you get buses off of Brevard and make Brevard more of that public realm, right? I always use the example of how great could it be if Brevard, when there's big events at the arena, Brevard becomes a pedestrian street out in front. And if we can accomplish retail on Brevard Street, that opens up from this project. So it's something that we've thought about. It's something that we've considered as we've looked at designs of bus movements and how do you take that away from Brevard. That's a piece of looking at it that we would like to achieve. Do you have anything to add?
I would just add from a pictorial standpoint.
I'm laughing with you, not at you.
This is Brevard. If you look at Brevard midday, you would have CATS buses on both sides of the street. Those are the extended. When I talk about reality, the current transit center has 24 bays, but when you add the on-street, it's really 32. And so we've got 8 additional bays on the sidewalk at Brevard. So an important part of this in helping to reach that future goal of more pedestrian activity, I've got to redesign this so that we're not bringing more on-street transfers to Brevard.
So what I'm hearing is that we're still considering this. We're going to try to figure out how to potentially keep that that pedestrian-centric approach there, but it's not definitely going to be there. But we're hoping that we can still design
Maybe
it to
this
it.
is an individual hope, right? Maybe this is right now just a hope. Mr. Winston is saying, I think that if you said 14 by inside and not
Got
non-meeting
24
outside.
outside and 8.
Possible.
Yeah,
But
today.
it hasn't.
Yes.
It's
playing
not-
spades.
It
It's a
does
possible.
not have, it's
It's not a
possible.
book, it's a possible.
That's right, that's right. Okay. All right, I think that concludes where we are today. Mr. Lewis and Ms. Dotson will be back and continue to work through this. And I think the idea was to show those options, and if there are any further questions or anything comes to you as you're looking at the pros and cons or a question about it, just contact Mr. Lewis and Ms. Dotson, and we'll continue to work towards this. So we are 9 minutes away from when we're supposed to start our public forum, and we have a presentation on arts and culture that's probably as long as this one. And I'm going to ask if we should defer that to the next meeting, or if we should try to do an abbreviated version of that in the manager's report. So your thoughts? It would have to be abbreviated significantly.
So, Mayor and Council, I'd recommend, well, first of all, in the first 2 business meetings, you begin to tackle safety and housing and now mobility. Arts and culture is one of those other heavy lifts too. I would suggest that instead of doing a scaled down version in the manager's report, that we just bring it back at the next business meeting.
All right. I think and that is true, it's a matter of how thorough we can be and have the same kind of discussion that we had here that's important to this item. So, all right, so with that, we will be downstairs. I'm sorry.
Do we have anything else that's going to be on that meeting so that we don't risk the chance of this getting bumped again?
You know, I'm not going to tell you yes or no, because I don't know what will be on that meeting. Mr. Jones, you got a 30-day
yes.
report?
So to Councilmember Mayfield's question, we do have an American Rescue Plan update, which is short, as well as the Equity and Government Framework, which will not be short. So I believe that the Equity and Government Framework and the Arts and Culture update are the two ones that should be discussed from a time standpoint.
I think if we know that in advance, we can probably work towards both items being done, if we start on time as well.
And Mayor and Council, the other thing I'll say is that for that second Monday of the month, you do not have a public forum. It's only the fourth Monday of the month. So you do have a little bit more flexibility if you go over in the action review on the second Monday.
That's true. Okay, all right, let's go downstairs and begin as quickly as we can to the next step. Welcome to the September 26th City Council, Charlotte City Council meeting. I am going to now call this session to order and ask all of you if you would join with us as we go through our agenda tonight. I am really glad to see so many of you in the audience and those that are viewing from home as well. So I'm going to, as this meeting is called to order, I'm going to begin our introductions with our city clerk.
Stephanie Kelly, City Clerk.
Dimple Ajmera at large.
Good evening, James Mitchell at large.
Good evening, Lawana Mayfield at large.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Vi Lyles serving as mayor.
Braxton Winston at large and serving as Mayor Pro Tem.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Tarek Bakari, District 6.
Good evening, Dante Anderson, District 1.
Good evening, I'm Victoria Watlington, your District 3 rep.
All right. We begin our meeting with an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is given by a council member and is intended to help us get through the evening and our agenda, as well as to understand how deeply what we do here at this dais impacts our residents. And tonight we will have Council Member Watlington provide her words of wisdom for us. And following Councilmember Watlington, we'll ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Watlington?
Sure. You can bow your heads if you so choose. Heavenly Father, as we meet tonight, we come together because we want to do good for your kingdom. I pray that we do not grow weary while doing this good thing, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. I believe that you will guide us in this meeting so that the results can be seen days, months, and even years after today. We endeavor to ensure that Charlotte remains a prosperous city for its people, led by its people. Please give us courage, humility, and conviction to lead, and may your wisdom guide our decisions tonight. Amen.
Thank you. If you would now stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before I begin our actual meeting, I want to recognize the Jewish members of our community who are celebrating Rosh Hashanah and are observing their high holy days. To my Jewish friends, I say, Shana Tova. May you have a good and sweet new year. So with that, we are now going to go to our public forum for our speakers. We have, each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the City Council, and we'll begin with we have two places at the dais, and we'll begin with Mr. Charles Ross and Luke Geddes, if I hope I said that correctly. So would you please join us at one of these podiums? And Mr. Ross would go first. Mr. Ross?
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to say good afternoon, Mayor of City Council of Charlotte, and I need your support. My name is Charles Ross, born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm here tonight to ask for your support for guidance and to overcome homelessness, keeping in mind the critical need for many homeless families, men and women. My journey as a businessman for 30 years in this city drastically changed due to the widening of Statesville Avenue in Charlotte, North Carolina around the year 2002. Moving forward, I've been homeless since 2013 after working hard, enduring the physical pressure of working 12-hour days, mostly 7 days a week to build a family. Working as a professional stylist in the hair business under the name of International Concept of Hair Design from 1982 to 2002. The widening of Statesville Avenue impacted my life like I would never have imagined. I lost my family, my business, and my property. My rental property that was located on Cedarhurst Drive in the Derrida area, due to electrical problems, burned to the ground. That was supposed to have been my retirement home. Electrical problems, and it burned to the ground. I couldn't get anyone to insure it because I was using it for rental property and no one wanted to handle it. So that was a loss. And also due to my underemployment, when I had my own business, I was supporting, my kids. I put 3 kids through college. I have a daughter currently at Winston-Salem State who is a junior studying pre-law. And I'm taking a small amounts of income that I have now to sort of hold things together, but it's not looking good. And moving from salon to salon, it was very frustrating. And coming from a business, man perspective, things wasn't adding up, and the money surely wasn't adding up. This and other problems brought me to living in my vehicle sometimes, the shelter I use. And I do have family here, but I'm trying not to be a burden to them. I'm respecting my children who are doing very well, but they deserve their privacy to raise their own family as well as I did.
Mr. Ross, thank you for sharing. That's a powerful story that I know that many people in our community could share with you. And I know it takes a lot of courage to come down here and talk about that. We are going to follow up and give you whatever programs that we have, especially as we also will work with the Mecklenburg County and see if there's some opportunities that we can help you in this situation. So thank you very much for sharing
All right.
that.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right.
Renee.
All right, our next speaker is Luke Gadez, and then followed by Jaron Simmons. Ms. Simmons, I think I see you here, but you can come down as soon as you feel comfortable. Right? All right. Yes, Mr. Gadez.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for your time, City Council. Here we are yet again. I represent the Charlotte skateboarding community. In the time since we last spoke, Eastland DIY Skate Park has been demolished. Our plan for a new skate park under the Tyvola Bridge has been put on hold due to complications with the railroad company. Instead of hanging our heads, the skateboarders have organized to create a 501c3 nonprofit called the Charlotte Skate Foundation, which seeks to raise money and secure safe locations for skateboarding within the city of Charlotte. We are in the process of collaborating with Parks and Rec to arrange a lease that would allow us to secure a new location on Parks and Rec property, which we would use for Charlotte's first ever legal sanctioned DIY skate park. We faced thousands of dollars in startup fees to get our nonprofit up and running, which we raised by a product raffle put together by Black Sheep Skate Shop, generating our own funding through the power of our own community. Skateboarding community is easily the most resourceful and persistent group of citizens this city has ever seen, in my opinion. We have proven time and time again that we are passionate about contributing to our city and creating resources necessary to expand our sport. Parks and Rec can't do it alone, so we're offering our guidance and involvement. Skateboarding belongs in the city of Charlotte because it is a form of recreation and exercise that does not require a league or scheduled practices, does not require a team or coach, does not require a large financial barrier to entry, and can be equally enjoyed by anyone regardless of their age, race, physique, or gender identity. All we need are places to do it, which Charlotte has not been as supportive of thus far as we would have hoped. But our plan is to utilize an old rundown tennis court in Kilbourne Park for a DIY skate park. We will likely have to carry our own liability insurance, which could be up to thousands of dollars a year. And we will be building the skate park ourselves using donated labor, materials, and funding over the course of the years to come. We are disappointed that the city was not able to provide an immediate alternative to Eastland DIY Skate Park, but we are hopeful that in the future we can still make a difference in our community and answer a need that has gone unfulfilled for decades. So I'm here to give an update on our end and to ask for the City of Charlotte's support as we move forward. If anybody would like to make a donation to Charlotte Skate Foundation, please find me and I can speak on how to do so. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones will give the council a report on the skate park in the next several days. Ms. Jaren Simmons,
Hi.
welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jaren Simmons, and I am your current Miss Charlotte USA. I was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. I graduated from North Mecklenburg High School, class of 2018. I just recently graduated from Johnson C. Smith University, and I saw you at the commencement. Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
I just recently graduated cum laude, majoring in interdisciplinary studies. And I'm currently a grad student at Queen's University studying in communications. I am also a professional model, and I model for Directions USA in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've modeled for clients like Belk, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, Shop Capital, St. John, Champion, and so on. I have graced 5 magazine covers, Charlotte Living. I've been featured in South Park Magazine. I've graced the cover of Wilma Magazine, Belk, the Mob Journal, that's an international magazine, and L'Officiel, that's based in Australia as well. My pageantry experience, I have ran for Miss Teen North Carolina. I came placed fourth runner-up, and I won Miss Photogenic. And I just recently ran for Miss Charlotte USA in June, and I won. And I'm running for Miss North Carolina USA in February 25th, 2023, next year. My purpose for running for Miss North Carolina is I want to be an agent for change. I want to set the example for young people, for young women, to show that they can do anything they put their minds to. Also, I want to bring awareness to scoliosis as well, because I had scoliosis, and I was diagnosed at the age of 11 in year 2011, and I had my surgery in 2015, and it was a life-changing decision for me because I used to want to play basketball at first. And when they told me that I had to have the surgery, they said I couldn't play contact sports after I have it. So I said, oh, wow, what am I going to do? So I decided to have the surgery, and within a month's time, I was on the runway in 5-inch heels, walking the runway. And thankful to my mom, she helped me through it all. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here today. My family, my mom and my dad. So I just wanted to come in front of you all and introduce myself formally as your Miss Charlotte USA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mom. Really appreciate it when moms and daughters are here together doing great work. Congratulations and good luck for the next steps.
Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Christian Cano and Gerald Levy. Mr. Cano and Ms. Gerald Levy will come join us downstairs. If Mr. Levy is not here, Marguerite Tucker. Ms. Tucker. All right. Mr.
Okay.
Cano, welcome.
Howdy and happy Hispanic Heritage Month to everyone. Salute. I'm here to talk about the 5 Ps that are important to my family: potholes, parks, the Panthers, parkways, and public safety. Since I have a very limited time, I'm only going to talk about 3 of those. Public safety and parks, I'll give to the county clerk my comments. My name is Christian Cano, and my family and I live in Charlotte's Old Providence neighborhood. I'm a former hospitality consultant and hotel manager, and I currently produce and co-host 2 podcast shows, the Coffee and Pandusa Show and the 2 Queers in a Truck Show. I am also one of our co-founders of the soon-to-be charter chapter of the League of the United Latin American Citizens here in Charlotte, who will be known as LULAC Charlotte Chapter when we are officially admitted. Part of our family has called Lincoln County in the Charlotte area home since the mid-1800s, and our other Tejano part of our family has called Texas home since Texas was Texas. That's a little bit of a Hispanic heritage, culture, history, if you aren't aware of where our families come from. Many of our families are deeply invested in the Charlotte region, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any of the groups or businesses or organizations that I'm a member of or support. Potholes. We do an incredible job of potholes here in the city, and I want to thank our city staff and our city workers for keeping up to date. Anyone who has lived in another city, when you come back to Charlotte, you realize what a great job we do. I just came back from Fort Worth, Texas, and I think they should pay everyone an alignment fee just to drive in Fort Worth, Texas. The Panthers. My family understands the value sports franchise have to a growing city and branding of modern cities, and we know how it made sense in the past. But we can all surely agree that it is not the case anymore. Today, modern sports franchise owners are not just your neighbor who's risking their money to get a sports team off the ground. There are billionaires and corporate partnerships who purchase a team to invest and to make money. And they should be treated like any corporation or business here in Charlotte who wants to live, work, and play in our city, which means if taxpayers are not paying for the new Bank of America building or a Truist building, Wells Fargo, a Harris Teeter, or even the new building for Manolo's Bakery for their employees to work in, we should not be paying for a sports teams building for their employees to work in. They can do it like everyone else does, get a bank loan, maybe get loans from their elder billionaire, or let us buy shares of their team if they want to build a new stadium. We currently practice socialism for sports team owners and capitalism for everyone else. Parkways, this is very important to my family, and out of respect for the Graham family, I'm going to keep some of my words very simple. If we want to truly become an international first-class city, we must treat everyone who lives here with respect and dignity. And that is why the name of the current parkway that leads to the airport and comes out of the airport is seriously problematic. Many of us will agree that the name of the parkway brings visitors from all around the world with all types of religions and all diversities. And we are forcing America's 5th busiest airport travelers. I'll leave the rest of my remarks.
Thank you very
to the
much,
clerk.
Mr. Cano.
Thank you.
All right. Did Mr. Gerald Levy? Marguerite Tucker? All right. Next is Lisa Groves and Sonia Dates. Lisa Groves and Sonia Dates. I think someone wants to join you down at the podium.
Good evening, City Council, City, County of Charlotte. I really don't want my face to be shown because I am a domestic violence victim, but it's fine. I'm standing before you.
Can you give us your name first so that we will be sure to.
My name is Sonia Dates.
All right. Thank you,
And
Ms.
I'm here
Dates.
because I am a client victim of Safe Alliance. I'm here because I brought like half of the shelter with me, with their kids, because we get 90 days to stay there. And after 90 days, we have nowhere to go. Nowhere. They haven't offered us nowhere to go but to Spratt Street, the Salvation Army shelter. So I'm here because when we go out of this shelter, we back in danger. We either going back to our abuser or we on the streets. Nobody even looking at that like we are really in danger out here in the streets with our kids. And I see that you guys built a $5 million building for, I guess, for Safe Alliance or whatever, but you need more to be done for us women that's out here scared victims. We are really victims. You know what I'm saying? Every night, these women deal with DSS, because once you get a domestic violence case, DSS involved, they in risk of losing their kids, especially if they go back in the streets. Safe Alliance is a good place, but we don't have no tools there to succeed. We don't have job openings. Most of the women leave everything, IDs, birth certificates, they have nothing. They just now, it's now the end of September, and they just now getting their kids in school. So I just want y'all to know that all these women that I got there, they is from the shelter, from the domestic violence shelter, Safe Alliance, and some of them gonna speak because I don't have that much time, and I'm a little nervous, but I just wanna let y'all know that we really do need y'all help.
Thank you, Ms. Dates. You did a wonderful job. Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Wu, Ms. Wu, and that followed by Anthony Smith. Mr. Smith. Ms. Wu, if you want, whenever you're ready to start.
So I'm like everybody else, not good in public speaking, sort of a little bit nervous. First, want to say congratulations to all of you for winning your elections. I haven't seen any of you or talked to any of you since the elections. My name is Emily Wu. I live in Charlotte since 1996 and been visiting since the 80s. So I've seen the changes going on in Charlotte, and it's fast and furious. The last 5 years is ridiculous. So I know some of the problem you guys have to face within the council and the work that you all have to do is tremendous. We are the 15th largest city in the United States. And I hope that we as Charlotte, a newer city, would lead by good example, because some of the cities around, we don't want to live there. That's why we are in Charlotte. And lately, there's something that kept me unable to go to sleep of what you all have done. The voters have made a choice by giving you guys votes, and the amount of votes depends on how much we like you. If you think about it, some of the people that vote for this council did not vote for every single one of you. They choose. There is 4 at-large votes that we could give. Some of us only give 3, 2, or 1. There is a reason behind it. Just because you are ambitious people, please do not have your ambitions blind you so much as to step on other people. Black life matters, so does Asian American lives matter. So is a lot of other people here, lives matter. As a city council, I would love for you, maybe I'm naive, but I would love for you all to set a good example, because what you do affects all of us and affects the staff in the city. Think about this. You go home and you tell your daughter, oh, don't worry, they didn't let you become the vice president because you're a young lady and you're a little bit younger and you're a little bit less know-how. So it's okay, let a guy have this vice president jobs. Is that okay? No, I say no. And it is not all right what you all did to Dimple. Mr. Braxton, I'm talking to you. I would like you to do the right thing. And I know there's a lot of rumors. I hear all of rumor. Something about y'all could not trust her. Something about there are influenced people that want you to do the thing. But please do the right thing.
Thank you very much for your comments. And now, Mr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Anthony Smith. I'm the owner of Black Hawk Troop Security. We're coming to you tonight for the awareness of my company, the safety of some of the officers and things like that. We need your help. There's a lot of things that's going on in Charlotte. I understand Charlotte is busy and things like that, but we wear a badge too. It may not be as important as many of them, but our lights are on alone as well. We really need y'all help, you know. And I know I done said that several times. We're trying to figure out how we can be partnered up with CMPD here in Charlotte, where a few officers then got arrested and things like that on things they shouldn't have got arrested on. So at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. I want to show myself to everyone to let y'all know we are in business here in Charlotte. That's pretty much it. I mean, I done got lost up in words. I had stuff that I was going to say, but I can't say it. I do apologize for that.
You don't have to worry about it. I think we got the point.
But, yeah. So hopefully
You have
we
a
can come to something.
business called Black Hawk Troop Security.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're located in what city?
We're here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
In Charlotte. And you are open for business.
Yeah, we are. We actually work in some of the areas of Charlotte, apartment complexes, certain businesses and things like that we're running into quite a few little hiccups that, like I said, we're trying to figure out what can we do as a company to kind of build those bridges.
So, Mr. Smith, we have a number of programs where we try to encourage minority-owned businesses to participate and get some skills. And so what we'll try to do is ask the manager to give you a sense of where some of those opportunities are. There's always networking, and you understand how important those relationships are. So thank you for coming down, and we'll get you some information about opportunities that we have as we try to strengthen our businesses locally, especially our minority-owned businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I wanted to be sure, I know that several of the women that came down to speak about domestic violence, I wanted you to understand that your faces, this is live, it's on Facebook Live, it's on our TV channel Live, so your faces will not be blurred, and we want you particularly to be protected, and so please understand that. And as we go through, and I know you have several other people wanting to speak, if there is a way that we could avoid that, and I don't know the answer to that, but just give us a moment as we get to some conversation about this. I know, but they can't do that. Let's just see. Some things that you can move the cameras behind. All right, our next speaker is Pamela Grundy. Ms. Grundy, are you here? And then Ms. Grundy is followed. We'll just wait for a moment. Ms. Grundy? Yes. I know those steps are not the easiest, I say.
Let's go. Hello, everyone. So great to see all of you. I know a number of you. I want to particularly congratulate Councilmember Anderson, my council member in District 1. So excited to see you here. I come bearing gifts. This is Legacy, 3 centuries of Black history in Charlotte, North Carolina, done by myself in conjunction with Queen City Nerve publication. We did this back in 2020 when Black Lives Matter resurged again, and it was clear that as a historian, young people, not those talking to each other at the dais, were really interested in history. And as a historian, that's very exciting. And particularly interested in Black history, but it was also clear, I've been a historian here for 30 years, that there was no good place to go. If you wanted to know Black history in Charlotte, there was nowhere you could go where you could easily get an overview. There were bits and pieces in lots of different places, but no one place. So with Queen City Nerve, I partnered to do a series of articles that we have now made into a book that is 3 centuries of Black history and overview of the history of Charlotte. And because we believe this history belongs to everyone, I'm going to use my very sad, homemade visual aid. This is available for anyone to read for free. If you go to queencnerve.com/legacy there and scroll down to the bottom, you can read the entire thing for free because it's not about making money off this history. It's about getting it to people. I'm not going to make all of y'all do that. I have a bag of books. There's enough for everyone at the dais. This is for y'all. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But again, if you out there in TV land want to read 3 centuries of history, 3 centuries of Black history in Charlotte, North Carolina, qcnerve.com/legacy, and it's all there for free. Thank you so much. I will hand this out. Somebody said, oh, we got to check these bags. They might be dangerous. There may be some dangerous ideas, but there are nothing that will harm you directly. So thank you again. Appreciate you being here. Looking forward to a great term for you, Dante.
Thank you, Ms. Grande. Our next several speakers want to talk about domestic violence and homelessness. And I just wanted to say that if you are willing to have your face on the camera, feel comfortable to come down. If not, we will continue to work with you. I see Ms. Askew up here, and she will speak with you in addition, and if you choose not to come down, and we all completely understand that. So I have Kiana Powell. Kiana Powell. And then okay, I am no longer going to say your names, and I apologize for that, but thank you for being here.
Thank you. How are you doing today? I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to all City Council. My name is Kiana Powell, and I am with the Safe Alliance program in the abuse shelter. I have some worries today. They leave us with no outlets. They don't help us. They don't help our children. We're fighting daily. Our anxiety is growing daily. They leave us with no way out, no outlet. Our children are not getting counseling as far as family go. I feel like they're basically allowing us to come stay for 3 months and pushing us back into the streets, back to our abusers, back into danger. If we took this outlet and we leave everything we know to make a better life for us and our children, how can they say to us, y'all have family, maybe you could go stay with them? I feel as if that's not the way out, because if it was, we would have never came to them for help. Basically, my advocate basically told me the same thing that Ms. Wu was saying, is you all get picked. And basically, my advocate was telling me that we all get picked and they go over everyone's clients in the place and they decide who fits that position to move forward and get that housing. I felt like that was a major issue. You know, some of us have children who are special needs, especially myself. I just feel like, what else is there to do? We're hopeless. We walked out on faith. We said we were tired, we were done, and they don't care. So that's what I have to say today. And our kids, they're lost, they're stressed. They look at us as if we're not fighting hard enough. I just want them to know that we're going to take the extra mile no matter what. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for sharing that. Our next speaker, your choice of how,
Yes, ma'am.
if you want to.
Yes, ma'am. How y'all doing? My name is Davina McAdams. I've been homeless for many years now, like 5 or 6 years. That's like staying out of hotel rooms, family members and stuff. I recently just got out of a abusive relationship. It lasted for like 2 years, verbal, physically, and I currently is housed in Safe Alliance. I work every day, ma'am. It's really not no resources. Like there's just not helping. Like I try and try. It's like we just can't get no help. And so I'm just here to like just try to find some resources and help, like to see, like, you know, I'm just ready to get back out there stable, like on my own, you know. So that's what I want to say. I thank y'all.
Thank you very much. I have one more person that wishes to speak. We have one more person. Okay.
Greetings, City Council. Thank you for hearing us out. I didn't want to come. I've been crying all day trying to figure out solutions for me and my children. I didn't want to come and speak, but at some point, somebody has to take a stand to do something different. We as humans, we just have to find a way to help each other. I came, like the other lady said, out of faith, and also experiencing a lot of fear, not sure what's the right way to turn. considering turning back to something that's not going to be progressive, especially for children that we're going to leave this world to. It's very, it's confusing, to say the least. If there are programs and there are stipends and there are positions that people are in to have resources for people that are homeless, especially women with children who are facing domestic violence, it should be allocated as such. I'm here just to express my same concerns, not feeling like there's no hope, and just hoping that there will be an opportunity for us to get justice in any way, shape, and form. Because a lot of our abusers get away with the reports that they make that are all lies. So I stand for the women of the Safe Alliance Domestic Violence Shelter in hopes that for me and women after me, that they can have the right appropriate resources as far as childcare. You can't have a job if you don't have childcare, and we can blame that on any of the things the choices that we've made as women. But if you have anything that you can do that can help support the progression of our society, I appreciate that, because I'm in that position, and I don't want anyone else to be in this position as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I can imagine, the city council joins you in your remarks in distress at the moment, and we need to spend some time doing some work on this. Ms. Askew is going to work with you, and we're going to try to get a little bit more details, some information that we can use, and get back to work. The city does support Safe Alliance. We provide funding for that program in partnership with Mecklenburg County. And so many of us have been over to tour their building and tour their programs and site. And so I would hope that we would be able to reconcile what's going on from your perspective, that we would have that opportunity. So look for something, and please join Ms. Askew in the lobby out front so that we can get more information and details that will help us do the research that we need to do necessarily. So thank you very much. So that's the end of our public forum, and with that, sorry, it's a little bit tough. With our public hearing, we'll now go to, we're going to do the arts and culture update later on, next week. So if you were signed on because you read the agenda and you saw that we were going to talk about arts and culture, that will take place later on. And now we've already approved our consent agenda. Okay. Our next item on our agenda is a public hearing that we have, and the first item is item number 7, a public hearing for Crestwood, Charlotte, Phase 9 Area Voluntary Annexation, and it's a public hearing, and then a following action to adopt an annexation ordinance with the effective date of September the 26th. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for that? No, ma'am. Without any speakers, may I have a motion?
Second.
A motion to open and close in the second. All in favor, please raise your hands. That's unanimous. And so do I have a motion for adopting the annexation ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adopting the annexation ordinance to include this property in the corporate limits of the city council adjacent to District 5. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. The next item is a public hearing and decision on Orchard Creek Area Voluntary Annexation to conduct a public hearing. We do have a speaker for this item, Joe Padilla. There you are.
Mayor, members of council, my name is Joe Padilla. I'm here tonight representing Smith Douglas Homes, the applicant, and Brookfield Holdings. I'm just here to answer any questions you might have about this annexation.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do you have a motion? I don't think you have any questions about this.
Nice to
Thanks
see you,
for coming,
Joe.
Joe.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion to close the public hearing, all in a second. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. And to adopt an annexation ordinance with an effective date of September the 26th to have this property included and assigned to City Council District 5.
So moved.
Motion, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say, raise your hand, and that is unanimous. All right. The next item is a public hearing on a resolution to close an alleyway off Ridgecrest Avenue and Ellsworth Road. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
No, ma'am.
Hearing no
Move to
speakers,
open
do
and
we have a
close.
motion to open, to close, and adopt a resolution to close the alleyway? Do I have a motion?
Motion to open and close the hearing.
And a second to adopt the resolution. Does your motion include that? Yes, thank you. All right, all in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. The next item is a public hearing on a resolution to close the old alignment of Ridge Road off Lawrence Gray Road, conducting a public hearing. To close, do we have any speakers, Madam Clerk?
No, ma'am.
Having no speakers, do we have a motion to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution to close the old alignment of Ridge Road off
So moved.
Lawrence? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. So that's unanimous as well. All right, I thought that we might move to an item that we have a number of people present to speak to on our policy agenda, and that is item number 13. We're going to take item 13 out of order, and it is a resolution of support for Officer Mia Goodwin Memorial Bridge. The action is to adopt a resolution of support of the North Carolina Department of Transportation and the designation of the bridge located at the intersection of W.T. Harris Boulevard and Interstate 85 in the state of North Carolina on the National System for Interstate and Defense Highways as the Officer Mia Goodwin Memorial Stage. Before we, could we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. This afternoon, I talked to Benton, who is Mia's husband, and he's got the 3 most adorable children to raise. And I asked him if he was going to be here tonight. You know, he serves as a firefighter for our city, and he said he couldn't be here tonight. And I said that we would all be glad to see him, but we understand that he has other responsibilities and duties, especially with the family. So I want to just say to each officer, thank you for standing up for him, and thank you for standing up for Mia. What you're doing is really so important and significant as we honor people that serve us and sometimes don't get to go home. So with that, we have a motion before us and a second. Anyone would like to make a remark or comment? Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On last week, I had the opportunity to do a ride-along with an officer with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and I just want to say that I left with a greater appreciation of the work that you guys and ladies do, the sacrifice that you make each and every day, the decisions that you have to make on the spot, and the commitment that you have for the citizens of the city of Charlotte. I want to thank you for the work that you do, and I want to honor the memory of Mrs. Goodwin tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So, Mr. Bakari?
I just want to thank you all for coming out and honoring Mia, and it was so tragic. I still think about it regularly, and I think about all you guys putting your lives in danger out there. We love you so, so much and appreciate everything you guys do. You're the heartbeat of this city, and just thank you all for everything.
What they said?
So I think you see the sentiment among every person that sits at this dais, how proud we are to be associated with the fine women and men in CMPD, and can't say enough about Mia Cunningham and her loss, our first female officer to die in the line of duty. So with that, all in favor of this motion, would you please stand and recognize her? I think that standing is unanimous, and thank you all.
Is that suggested?
All right. We're going to go ahead and continue our meeting, and our next item is the city manager's report.
So thank you, Mayor, members of council. I have just one item on the report. That's the 30-day memo. And then before you go into the minority women business enterprise disparity study, we'll have staff that will pop up behind the lectern. I would like to, before I go into the 30-day memo, is just make sure that I acknowledge what I would call Team Charlotte and what happened in the city of Charlotte last week in terms of the President's Cup, in terms of a NFL home game, an international arts festival. It's incredible with police and fire and water and CDOT, solid waste services, just all came together. And I'll never forget, Mr. Graham, when you first came on council, there was a question about how we would be able to do multiple special events. And I just can't be more excited about just the work that the team put together. So if there was ever a proud moment for, Team Charlotte and how we come together, I think was really displayed last week. And I just want to publicly show that appreciation.
Here, here.
That is true. I think they had 40,000 people at the golf tournament and 60,000 in the stadium. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And I think they're supposed to spend an average, Mr. Driggs, of $300 per person.
That's right. That's the information we had. Tourism. Yep.
Thank you.
And so in terms of the 30-day memo, I believe it's that the ink didn't dry and we had to make a little bit of an adjustment as it relates to what occurred in 267 tonight. So I will give you an update, but it's our intent. And what I'll do is go back. The last 30-day memo that you had, we had funding recommendations for pending housing trust fund projects actually on the 10th of October. We moved that to the 24th of October. And as you know, the world would suggest that some of these projects that we have are going to be challenging to pencil out. So what I'm doing tonight is telling you that we're working with everybody who has any type of project and seeing if there are any gaps and things of that nature. And as soon as we can get that information to you, we will. I have it for the 24th. If we can go sooner, I'll try to make sure that we keep you engaged with what's going on there. But the equity and governance framework would be on the 10th. We would have our arts and culture update. And when we were, I guess, upstairs, instead of trying to jam it into the manager's report, we think that that is one of those 6 priority areas for the council. So let's make sure that we give it its due diligence. And I think it also gives us an opportunity for some of the newer council members for us to provide some information, and for some of the council members who've been around to provide some additional clarity about what's the right pathway forward. And then the one thing that I think is important that I mentioned tonight is for the past several months, we have been talking about this Future of Charlotte Housing and Jobs Summit. So there's been conversations with the ED chair and the Housing and Safety chair to make sure that we have an opportunity to pull all of this together, think about this in a different way, and to see how we can use some of the stimulus funds that we have that gives us an outcome that we're trying to achieve. So on your calendars, I think it happened last week, you have the October the 20th and the 21st that's been set out, and there's the meeting next week with some of the committee discussions. So there will be some opportunities for the chairs to talk a little bit about these in their committees. But with that said, this is longer than I expected to do, just a lot of things that have been happening. But that's the 30-day memo that we have for you tonight.
Any questions for the manager? Ms. Johnson and followed by Ms. Mayfield.
I know I was late coming in. I'm sorry. Did you mention the virtual meeting discussion on the agenda?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Councilmember Johnson earlier today, and one of the things, and I hope I'm right, I believe I'm right with this, Councilmember Ashmira, that the virtual meetings and some of the questions around that came from the Budget and Effectiveness Committee to the council, back to the Budget and Effectiveness Committee, and we believe there's an opportunity Monday when the committee meets to try to discuss that a bit more so they can come back to the body. I had a conversation with Councilmember Watlington. You may recall a couple of meetings ago, she asked, could we put this on the 26th, which is tonight? But I wanted to make sure that whatever we put on the agenda is actually what the council wants to discuss.
I have a question. So, I think it was already voted out. It was already discussed at the committee level.
It
And the
was, and
recommendation was made by the Budget and Governance Committee. So are we sending it back to the committee now?
It was.
Let's talk about, the former chair can tell us what happened and the discussion and how it got back to committee, but it's back.
So what happened before, which Ms. Ajmeri, you'll remember, and other committee members, it was sent to the Budget and the Governance Committee at that time. We had an extended discussion, and we kind of whittled it down to where we were going to use the old language, but with potentially a proviso that said illness or emergency. The vote on that was split 3-2, so it was majority passed in committee, sent it back to the full council with that recommendation, having done the work. There was a somewhat disorganized discussion on council, and then the suggestion was made, let's send it back to committee. So it came back to us with no clear mandate as to what further work was needed at the committee level. It just felt as if that night the council was not able to come together around a majority position. So I honestly don't know, if you look and talk with Lena about all the work that was done in our committee the first time, I don't know what more we can do. We can explain all of the circumstances, the state law, the School of Government recommendations, and at some point, it's really just down to the council to decide how we want to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on Mr. Drake's point, the committee has done the work. I mean, we came up with the language. I don't know what more could the committee do at this point? But I understand the committee makeup has changed with the new council, so if the new committee would like to discuss that again, but we already had a language that was approved by the committee, even though it was divided 3-2. I thought there was a decision point that now it's up to the full council. But I mean, I understand that on committee we have 3 new members, so we can take a look at it again. But I think it would help so that we are not discussing this again just to have reference materials, because there was a lot of research that was done by our legal team. Lena had put in so much work into this. So, I'd like us to just revisit some of that without having to spend so much time on it again.
I agree with you, Ms. Ajmera. I believe that the information is there. I think just what we need is a clarity of this is what the recommendation is from the committee, and you can, the timeline and the research, and just getting it back to us in a semblance that we can all understand. Does that make sense? And I'm sure the city attorney's office will be helpful in that. Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I hold my comments till later business agenda item.
All right. So, Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, as was mentioned, we have a couple of new members on council now, including a couple of us who are returning. I have a request for a update on a future manager's report. We heard a number of individuals that showed up tonight that had concerns, and very real concerns, regarding a partner that we have funded at very high financial levels. If we're also utilizing the former social serve, which is now My Housing Search, a general search on that, there's about 252 properties in the city right now. It would be helpful to get an update of how are our partners being truly utilized
And when we're looking at having multiple requests of subsidy assistance, how are those funds actually being distributed out into the community? Because even though we have a large, over 20,000 deficit of housing access, there has to be some conversation of a priority. And if we have 252 units, if there truly are 250 in the funding requests and the funding approvals that this committee does, so that it's actually correlating to the needs in the community.
So Councilmember Mayfield, and I think this is where we had got a little sideways with the 26th. Would it be fine for you if we wrote a short position paper on what we have and distribute that to the entire council as a starting point?
As a starting point, as long as the expectation and understanding that my direct ask is we have funding that we have allocated to partners. Those partners have a responsibility. If we are hearing from constituents that those services are not being connected, it will be very helpful for us to know exactly where those funding dollars are going, so that we can ensure that we're being representative to the community.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I want to say I'm sorry, Ms. Watlington, followed by Mr. Driggs.
And then I think Ms. Johnson's got her hand up too.
I'm sorry.
And
I'm sorry.
after Ms. Watlington, it's fine.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead, Ms. Johnson. I went to him and we need to go ahead. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I just want to piggyback off what Councilmember Mayfield is talking about. In a previous meeting, I asked for outcome reports for all of our partners. That's something that we should be gathering from our funding partners or the organizations that we're funding. So if we're getting outcome reports from those organizations, and then also as you're giving an update, as you're giving an update to the new council, if you could just give them some information about the Umbrella Center, and they'll give you an update. But that's something that the city allotted $5 million to. It's a public-private partnership, and I, for one, advocated numerous times for our money to be directed towards vouchers for the residents, more so than the brick and mortar. So I don't know if we're able to revisit that, but there's an obvious need. We only have 80 beds for domestic violence victims in the city, and they need housing in a city that's not affordable. So I know we've talked about that, Mr. Jones, if there's anything that we can do with that money, especially, again, we really need to take a look at helping these victims and giving them the resources they need so they're not going back to the perpetrators.
I wanted to follow up the first comment that you made about the financial. That has been referred to the Budget and Effectiveness Committee, and we talked about that earlier today. Ms. Ashmere, do you want to?
Yes, I just, to your point about accountability, Mayor referred that item to the committee. So that will be the first item on our agenda, because currently we have partners that are leasing our city-owned space and buildings that do not have the financial reporting requirements. So we are trying to close that gap, because we have financial reporting requirements for our financial partners. But we have a lot of organizations that are getting greater benefit for leasing our space, which is actually economical benefit, but there is no financial reporting attached to that. So this will be the first item on our agenda. I hope you can attend our meeting. I understand there needs to be accountability on outcomes and how well some of those results are aligning with our council priorities. So this is certainly a priority for the committee.
And then Ms. Watlington?
Yes, I was actually going to go along the same lines of Councilmember Johnson, so I support that. I was actually going to ask if, I would expect that for any donors, they've got some kind of quarterly or at least biannually kind of report So to the extent that that's already existing for our partners, would love to see it. The other thing I was going to mention is I see the ARPA discussion coming up, and certainly from a housing standpoint, I think that there's got to be opportunity there to think about how we provide housing for domestic violence victims who clearly were impacted by the pandemic, not being able necessarily or have as many opportunities to leave their homes. So I'd love to see us bake that into that discussion.
Yeah, I'll add one of, Ryan, it's going to be okay. One of the budget director's concerns is that we're not moving the ARPA money out fast enough. Part of the plan was to take that $60 million, wait for the summit, just on the housing piece. It's a little less than 60 now, because we used the $8 million for Pepper Tree. But and then there's $16 million associated with jobs, minority-owned businesses, and workforce development, $16 million that we were, holding back so that the summit can occur, and that this new council would have an opportunity to be innovative with how do we use these funds.
I had Mr. Driggs and then
Did you want to
Mr.
respond?
Graham.
Ms. Lyles, Mayor, Councilman, good to see you guys again. Some new faces, some I recognize. Thank you for your time. My name is Dormel Lee. I am of Clover Construction Consulting, and I'm also the president of Metrolina Minority Contractors Association, MMCA. We represent, I represent a demographic of businesses that's unique in the city of Charlotte. It kind of pretty much replicates the city. So we don't only have minority-owned businesses, we have majority-owned white businesses that represent our organization as well. And so I'm speaking on their behalf tonight. I've looked at the disparity study, I've reviewed it, and I just want to say we accept the findings of the study. I appreciate you guys' work. I appreciate the law firm putting together that, and a lot of the stuff that's in there, we deal with it on the front line as minority-owned businesses. So we appreciate the fact that you guys are taking this seriously, and just want to let you guys know that we are taking it seriously as well. And so on the recommendations, and speaking with my colleagues and our members, we agree with most of what is being recommended. However, there are some things that we would like to have a discussion about. So what I ask is that before you move forward with the approval of the recommendations, that our organization, as well as the Hispanic Contractors Association of the Carolinas, who is a partner of ours as well, that we have a seat at the table and do a collaborative effort, a joint effort to work with CBI in those recommendations so that we can, as business owners who are out here on the front line, that we have a voice. That's what our members want. So I just wanted to say that to you guys tonight, and I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lee. All right, we have a motion on the floor, and any discussion? Mr. Driggs.
Thank you, Mayor. I realize the CBI program is very popular, and I support its goals. I voted for it in the past. I have misgivings now, and therefore will not be able to support this motion. And briefly, because I don't want to take up a lot of everybody's time, I'm concerned that based on the presentation we received from the consultant, we have some legal exposure, and I realize that our own legal team has advised us that they think that risk is manageable. But what we were told was that there had been a number of cases that had been decided unfavorably when it came to programs like this, and that they were under increasing scrutiny. So I looked at the report itself, and I thought that the methodology had some places where I could see an enterprising lawyer challenging. The finding was that we were at an availability ratio of 92% when you're supposed to be under 80% to have a program like this. And the interesting thing about that was that the ratio was actually higher for businesses other than black businesses. And it was only for black businesses that we were well below. So another concern I have is that we don't actually know how much this program costs. So the thought that goes through my mind is, could we assess the cost of the program and maybe find a more targeted way to use the extra money that we pay for these contracts specifically for the benefit of the black businesses who are still, according to the study, underrepresented? Another concern I had was that we were told that the scope of the study now is statewide because, in fact, Charlotte does 75% of its procurement outside of the city. So once again, the idea that we are paying more for contracts in order to include companies that aren't in Charlotte troubles me, and I would like to see us be more focused in benefiting companies that are in Charlotte. And to the speaker's point just now, the study has the kind of calculations in it that are needed for us to justify, but it also goes off in different directions with advice and things. And so, to me, separating the recommendations, like the advice in the study, from the portion that we need legally to make this program defensible would make more sense. And to that extent, again, I agree with the speaker that maybe we can just use the numbers to establish a defense legally, and then consider some of the other recommendations, if I understood you correctly, in consultation with the businesses who are actually parties to this. So just want everybody to know that's the basis for the fact that I will not be able to support this. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Watlington?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a few questions. The first one is just so we're clear, Mr. Attorney, can you please speak to your opinion or your office's opinion of the legal risk of approving and accepting the disparity study results?
Yes, and I think it was Senior Assistant City Attorney Thomas Powers that
Forgive me, Mr. Powers.
That's all right. That's my boss, so by all means.
We're of the same mind, but Mr. Powers actually gave the opinion, and it's probably best to hear directly from him.
Absolutely. No disrespect.
None taken. Members of council, again, the question was posed to the Economic Development Committee as to the potential legality or illegality of the disparity study report. The city attorney's office is of the opinion that the report is defensible. The consultant that we hired is actually one of the foremost consultants for disparity studies, not only for Charlotte, but also nationwide as well. Myself, as well as Steve Coker and Phil Rieger, when we evaluated all of the potential consultants, believed that this consultant was the best person based on not only their experience, but also their actual methodology being challenged in a court of law, and believed that based on the information that was presented to us, that we are of the opinion that this is legal for you to consider adoption tonight. I will note that that is separate from the policy question of whether you should adopt, but the city attorney's office is of the opinion that based on the current case law as of today, we're able to defend this in a court of law. I will note, to Councilmember Driggs's point, that if the case law were to change tomorrow or in the future, that does change the analysis. But as of today, for this recommendation that we're presenting to the entire council, we are comfortable at this time for council to adopt the current disparity study as well as amending the sunset provisions to January 1 of 2028.
And in the event that case law changed in the areas that you believe could be subject to change, would we be in a position to amend our policy such that it would fit the new case law, or based on what you know, would it be a non-starter?
The city attorney's office, as well as the CBI program, is aware of cases that are proceeding right now through the various federal courts, possibly up to the U.S. Supreme Court. If a decision were to be adverse to our legal authority to actually operate in the future, we would communicate that immediately to council to let not only CBI staff know, as well as council know, what would be the impacts based on that judicial opinion based on the situation at hand. I cannot speculate at this moment as to how the courts will actually rule on all the issues, but I can commit that if there were to be an adverse decision, we would immediately inform CBI as well as this council and the manager's office.
And anything that we do up until that point is completely within.
If council were to adopt the report as of tonight and thereby change the sunset date, yes, you would have the legal ability to move forward. I would highlight just one little portion, though, which is the operational piece. If you were to adopt the report, Steve Coker and his team will be leading this council through the operational piece, which is changing the policy to not only meet the needs of the report, but also what you believe is to be appropriate. So that piece will also be something that will come back fully through this council as well. So I would defer to him on those operational aspects.
Thank you for that. To that point, operational aspects. Mr. Coker, how you doing tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Can you please speak to this idea of extra money specifically for this program to run? And I'm talking specifically about what Mr. Driggs mentioned. He alluded to extra money being used in order to either run this program. And Mr. Driggs, you may need to clarify. I want to make sure I don't misspeak on your words. You alluded to concerns about extra money specifically for minority or black businesses. I just want to understand what that.
I'll just clarify. When you have a program like this, you don't necessarily take the lowest cost bid. You take the lowest cost bid that meets our goals, right, for the CBI. And in so doing, you end up paying a bit more than you would have if you had just gone to the lowest cost bidder without regard. And all I'm saying is we should have a handle on what those differences are, and we should know what the costs are and what the benefits are. And my suggestion is that it's possible we could achieve a better result with more targeted investments of that money that we're spending on this program.
Gotcha. Is it possible that we can just get that? It doesn't have to be right.
I would think that's a matter of follow-up. I can say this. We do recognize low bid contracts. Can't tell you that we've never paid more, but we're very conscious of that. But we could follow up.
Okay. My next question is, we heard from the Metrolina representative that they'd like a seat at the table. I would bet my bottom dollar that Ms. Shawn is going to come up here and tell us how she used what we know from industry to deliver the program. I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Shawn Thomas. I'm the Assistant Program Manager for Charlotte Business Inclusion. I was so happy to see Mr. Darmel Lee here today from Metrolina. They do have a seat at our table on our Charlotte Business Inclusion Advisory Board. They are represented by Valerie Dell, who is very active in helping us go through the disparity study findings and the recommendations. And to Councilmember Watlington's point, we do have a plan, if you so wish to adopt this study, that we will work hand in hand with our Charlotte Business Inclusion Advisory Committee, which has broad representation, in order to bring back to the Economic Development Committee recommendations. And so we will have stakeholders from around the community who really have skin in the game in the success of this program. So we're going to actually try to go into retreat with them to make sure that we are open, transparent, and listening.
Thank you. And while you're there, I do have one final question, and it happens to be for you. We spoke a little bit earlier about the need for better measures for our partners. I think that's a general discussion. I know that every time we have a budget book in front of us, we look at measures, and I know Mr. Manager knows where I'm going with this. Specifically for our economic development and our MWSBE measures, I want to see and I know that you've done work, I'm about to ask you a little bit about it. I want to see how that lines up with our investments and how we're going to move the MWBEs, because I'm of the mind, perhaps in alignment with Mr. Driggs, that at some point we won't need this program because there won't be a disparity. That's truly the goal, but we won't know if we've reached that unless we're measuring it. So I'd like to see that baked into our performance management metrics, specifically as part of our city manager evaluation. So that's something that is priority to us. And I'll end with this. If you could please speak to a little bit of what you've been able to do to make sure we have the data to make those assessments.
So I want to first and foremost thank Manager Jones. He has brought a tone to the city of fact-based, evidence-driven strategies. And with that, he's opened up many resources for us to really put a concrete foundation on the program when it comes to our measures for spend. We can't have intentional strategies unless we have real numbers. And so the work that Mr. Jones has done has allowed us to then have that foundation laid. And so some of you, we've been able to share with you how we have changed the program under Mr. Coker and been able to really have fact-based, evidence-driven strategies to approach the areas that you're talking about tonight. For example, how can we increase spend with African-American women, perhaps in technology? Are our strategies actually working? And so now we have metrics in place where we can measure that year over year and really know. For the first time in many years, due to what Mr. Jones has allowed us to do, we can tie our spend numbers back to the ACFR. And therefore, we now can see whether or not what we're doing is moving you all in the direction that you want to go. And I look forward to working with each of you to find out how you want to move this program forward to impact the economy, our economy for minority and women businesses in a very positive way.
Thank you so much. I know that you all are absolutely committed to the effort from the attorney's office to the city, and I just appreciate the work that you do. Your passion shows up and your excellence. So I look forward to supporting you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I have Mr. Bakari, followed by Ms. Anderson.
Thanks. The first thing I'll mention is no matter what, we have to understand the full cost. Even if we're going down this path, to not have done that analysis is a little concerning to me because just closing our eyes to it just doesn't make any sense. Also, my commitment towards this front, for those of you who know me, can be unchallenged, but I hope you'll take this in the spirit it's intended. The biggest threat to disparity is diagnosing disparity where it doesn't exist. So we have to be honest about these things for them to truly have the impact they need. The goal, definitely legal sound, legally defensible, but there's also the goal of being true to the spirit of identifying the disparity. And I think that's what Thomas was just saying, in that there's a legal question, but then there's a policy question. And I'll just give you 2 data point examples that I was able to spend an hour just looking through the study that concerned me greatly, and I would hope it would concern you as well on this front. The geographic scope as a data point. You heard that mentioned a minute ago. Really, that just asks the question for the public out there where we answer how many minority businesses could have done business with the city. What's the availability, basically? The Charlotte CSA accounts for over 58% of all the contract dollars that we've spent. And then all of North Carolina plus York County brings it up to 74%, which was the scope that was ultimately used here. This means that only 15% of our spend was added, but we went from 13 counties to determine our availability of minority-owned businesses that could have done business with the city to over 100 counties. That's a huge scope jump right there alone. And I understand that 75% is considered best practice, but it just doesn't pass the logic test to me. Again, the policy question, especially when you consider there are tools to right-size these results out there. Page 29 of the Wainwright and Holtz National Disparity Study Guidelines says it's advisable to separate construction from other outcomes to help normalize the data. There are tools out there to help us get to the spirit of where we're headed. Then the other data point is the weighted availability. I hope you all paid close attention to that. For the public, that's the calculation that determines if a disparity exists, and it takes something called utilization, which is how much the city spent with how many minority-owned businesses, and availability, which is how many minority-owned businesses exist out there that the city could have spent money with. And here's the problem with that. The weighted availability adds in this expanded geography I just mentioned, plus it adds in this broader industry market share outside of the specific areas that might have had specific vendors that were minority owned in there. So that's a real challenge to me. And for example, just to use math here, which is part of this exercise, we utilize black-owned businesses 2.4%. The weighted availability of, again, what we could have contracted with them was 3.8%. That's where you get to that 63% disparity level, which is below the 80% threshold that's there. But if you strip out those 2 factors I just said, geographic scope, and then you bring down this weighted availability that uses that, that brings us down to 2% of availability, which is 120% well above the threshold. So in my industry, it's the little-known secret, or the well-known secret, that we can make data say anything. The question is, are we truly being honest towards true disparity in these models, or have we essentially preconceived an outcome that we made the data tell us that story? And I truly believe that the real goal at this point, if where we are is the quick math I've done, which could be legally challenged, I totally think that's still a possibility, but it's more important that we don't continue down this path if the true answer is that 2.7% availability needs to be brought up. The community, we need to find more businesses that can do it, not say artificially through numbers that the body of work is just award more stuff. I think that's really, really important. And again, I hope you will take that data point in the spirit it was intended.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not quite sure about my colleague's math toward the end, but I did want to speak to earlier, there was a conversation around disparity ratios in the representation. And we have a challenge with city spend, not only with African American spend, but also with women as well. And if you look at one, maybe two, but one particular group that is of diverse nature where we're grossly over-indexing, and you were to call that out and then rebalance it, you would see that our overall number would drop significantly as it relates to what we are doing as it relates to minority spend. So there are a couple of pieces there. One is that we're not spreading the pie and treating every diverse group equally. The other piece that we haven't talked about tonight, but Colette brought up when she presented to us, was the spend as it relates to particular industries and how the strength of the dollars that we spend hit more minority groups deeper and their pockets get deeper than others. And so I think that's really important too. I just personally have run several of these programs throughout my career from a private industry perspective. They typically don't cost more money to actually operationalize. However, we need to see that data. I'd like to see that data as well. But there is some real work that needs to be done here as it relates to how we are supporting minority-owned businesses within the city.
For sure.
All right, is there any further comment or question? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the recommendation to approve the Economic Development Committee's recommendation, please raise your hands. All right, all of you oppose? 2 are opposed. The motion passes. All right, the next item is item 14. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution ratifying an interlocal agreement between the city and the town of Mooresville, Mecklenburg County, and Iredell County regarding public safety radio communications, including a core fiber cable for radio communications, and adopting a resolution authorizing the manager to negotiate and execute an interlocal agreement with the towns and counties as mentioned, and authorize the manager and his designee to negotiate all and execute all documents necessary for the interlocal agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. The next item is authorized grant applications for stormwater projects. Is there, for item 16, is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or his designee to apply for grant funding in an amount of $10 million? Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip? 15, you're right.
He's gonna get mad at you.
I'm going to try to get, you're right. How could I forget that one, too?
Be eager there.
Okay, item 15. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the donation of 3 vehicles to the Johnson C. Smith University Police Department?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. That's unanimous, thank you. Now we can go to stormwater projects. So I was saying that we're adopt a resolution authorizing the manager to apply for a grant in an amount of $10 million with the North Carolina Department of Environmental
environmental quality for various stormwater projects, authorizing him to accept a grant in amount totaling up to $10 million from the same organization, and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating that $10 million as well. Is there a motion to adopt A, B, and C?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? Ms. Johnson? Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a question about the use of the dollars. Not that I need all of the details, but one of the things that we hear from our residents, there's so many residents whose yards are flooding and they don't fall into the group that is eligible for stormwater assistance. Will any of this money be used to help residents who are having to mitigate property damage, more than once or numerous times or even once, due to issues with pipes or stormwater or anything? Is there any opportunity to assist more residents?
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the question. This grant opportunity enables us to seek funding for flood mitigation projects, and those are projects that we've previously identified as qualifying for services by the city. It does not authorize expansion of our current program, but there will be flood reduction efforts in neighborhoods, street reduction efforts, and street flooding reductions in neighborhoods, and improve the quality of life for those residents. But it does not authorize expanding our current program.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, question for clarification. The allocation of this funding is to help with the mitigation. I know of a current project that's happening where for more than 30 years, this particular lot has been identified in a floodplain. So it's just been trees that have been there to help mitigate naturally. Well, recently, within the last few weeks, all of those trees have been removed. They're somewhere along the line. The LLC that owns that particular lot has been approved to develop a single-family unit, possibly do at a duplex, in what was identified as a floodplain. How do we account for, as we move forward, knowing that we have had challenges in the past with development and projects that have created a strain on our current system and have created definitely a negative impact in neighborhoods and with individual homeowners? I'm trying to understand, and Mr. Manager, maybe a question for you, if not for staff. How do we mitigate that when we are requesting to approve the ability to apply, accept, and distribute, and at the same time we're approving projects that's going to potentially contribute to the challenges?
Yeah, what I'll say about that is you described the reasons that we have a stormwater utility in Charlotte, right? There's a lot of legacy program problems that were created in decades past, a lot of building in harm's way, a lot of perhaps not stringent enough ordinances that were in place decades ago. And so this grant will enable us to correct some of those problems that were created decades ago. Now, on the development side of things, we do have ordinances in place. We put those in place starting in 2008, and we have continually strengthened them to prevent flooding impacts and surface water quality impacts due to new development and redevelopment. So there are programs in place to mitigate that. They're not 100% effective, but they are very effective, and we think that they're going to help us have a more sustainable future.
Ms. Mayfield, I think if you have that address, maybe that's a good thing to submit for review.
Well, actually, I reached out to our code enforcement manager, Jane Talon, to ask when I saw the clear cutting happening, because it was at 1510 Noel Place. And when that was happening, because again, the neighborhood association and the community for more than 30 years have been told there cannot be a home built here because of. And now that whole conversation has changed. Everything has been clear cut, all the trees that created some safety barrier in a cul-de-sac that cul-de-sac does have a major incline in the grading. So it's going to be interesting that as we attempt to identify funding resources to mitigate yesterday's problems, we are allowing tomorrow's problems to happen today.
Point taken, and I'll just add that when the Unified Development Ordinance goes into effect next year, there will be some strengthened protection for flooded areas, low-lying areas that would help mitigate those types of problems.
Thank you.
So is it effective in January of next year?
I think it's effective in June, if I'm not
June.
mistaken.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your comments and questions. Are there any other questions or comments, discussion? Ms. Johnson, yes?
I'm sorry, I just have to make sure we're saying it. So we have like lots of residents who've had damage to the yards multiple times. I know that there was some period where they would have been eligible for assistance, and now they're not. I can think of neighborhoods in District 4, Chestnuts, Browns Ferry, other neighborhoods, lots of other neighborhoods. So we just have to do something. I don't know if this is the grant or if there is something that we're looking at. I know that I'm not the only one. I remember Mayor Pro Tem Isel used to talk about it. So if we could just, Mr. Jones, if we could just really find a way to strengthen the assistance or to do something, because the more that we're approving development, we are worsening the problems for the residents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so all in favor of the motion for item 16, please raise your hands. All opposed? Ms. Mayfield is in opposition, so it passes with one objection. All right, the next item is for item 17. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution approving a one-year lease agreement for preferred parking services for .72-acre portion of parcel identified as number 073-151-10, and authorizing the manager to execute the necessary agreements and documents for this transaction for up to 2 one-year terms. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, please raise your hands if you're in favor of the motion. Motion passes unanimously. Oh, I'm sorry, we have anyone opposed? Mr. Winston is opposed. Thank you. The motion passes. The next item is item 18 for a motion to adopt a budget ordinance appropriating $160,000 in private developer funds for infrastructure improvements to the General Capital Projects Fund from the following developers: GJH University and WPBXW Highland. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Sorry, raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. The next item is to amend the 2022 City Council meeting schedule. The changes are really to move to the first Monday of the month meeting from 5 to 6 p.m. to accommodate the new council schedule. That is the meeting of the council following the committee report meeting, so that there's a dialogue among the council that starts at 6. I'm sure we'll still have dinner about 5. Okay. With that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any
I just
discussion?
have a comment.
All right. Yes.
We're gonna change the meeting schedule, and we're doing everything with the committees on Monday. I just I think it's relevant to the earlier conversation about virtual meetings, that there is the option for council members to attend those committee meetings virtually on Monday. So I think the discussion that we were talking about was really about business meetings where there will be a vote and figuring out possibly ways to go about doing that. So council does have that option, should it be each one of yours prerogative. We just talk to staff about how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I just want to make sure I'm
Ms.
clear.
Watlington?
The current policy talks about virtual options for committee meetings under given circumstances. Are you saying that we have the option based on the current policies, or are you saying we have the option, period?
I think that what, I'm going to let the city attorney and talk about our procedures, the way the committees word that year was virtual, and I think there was a request that you notify the staff in time to be able to set it up, because it would be on Mondays for everyone. So if you're not going to, if you want to attend virtually, just letting the staff know, but I didn't bring my book down, so.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The only reason I bring it up is as we talk in committee about updating the rules of procedure for the program, I just want to make sure that that's captured and it reflects our intent. I think I shouldn't say everybody, I think the majority of us are on the same page. I just want to make sure our rules of procedure match, that's all.
So.
And we'll clean that up at the appropriate time to do that, yes.
Okay.
So,
So right now, yes, Ms. Hashmira?
so point of clarification. So are we saying that the recommendations that committee had made in the past was just for the committee meetings, not for the council meetings? So now is the Budget, Governance, and Intergovernmental Committee charged with looking at the virtual options for both committee and council meetings?
I think that was the question before, when it was just a question to discuss. Nobody was quite sure what we were discussing because we hadn't gotten to the.
So we are looking at virtual
So-
option across the board, is
I
that?
think I would suggest looking at the procedure, because there were some things in there I think that the city attorney thought would be appropriate to review for the committees as well, but that can be cleaned up. And then after that, let's.
Yeah. So just again, to clarify, there's some questions about, from a business standpoint, when there are binding votes going on, from a legal standpoint, whether that business would be seen as viable under state law. That is not the case in our committee meetings. So since we don't have those same concerns, we said, if you need to have a virtual meeting, talk to staff for those committees.
That's committee meeting.
Committees, yes.
Yeah,
No.
not the council meeting.
Yes, council also.
No,
Yes.
this conversation is just for the committee.
Wait a minute, the referral was
I'm not
okay,
talking about that.
but
yeah.
the referral is for the committee to discuss council meetings. This all stemmed from when I wasn't able to participate in a meeting because I had COVID. So that's when it was referred to. We were going to talk about it on the 26th. So yes, it was for council meetings as well. And I think I thought we all should recall that.
Yeah, I'll pull all the information so that everyone's on the same page, particularly for the new council members and those that are returning, since they weren't involved in the conversation. But we'll pull all that information together. But I do just want to reiterate the councilwoman's point here on this, Councilmember Watlington, that your current rules do state, as it relates to committee meetings, by reason of injury or illness as it relates to committee meetings. And I think there's been a consensus on council. It hasn't been adopted and codified into Rule 28A, but there's been a consensus on council that beyond illness or injury, that committee meetings should continue with a virtual option. So that's what I mean by truing that up when we actually go into Rule 28 and make any changes. That's my understanding of what the consensus of council has been, and these are your rules. These aren't ordinances or statutes or anything like that, and that's what I mean by when we get and talk about the council meetings, that we'll need to true this up and make sure that that's clear with the council.
I think that we often say we all want that, and I'm not sure that we've ever raised our hands to say we all want that, or we have a majority vote for it. So I think that that's what the city attorney is going to do, is say, here's what the current rule is, and if you want to change it, then make that recommendation, and then if you get the 6 votes, then it happens. I'm not sure about the requirements for the actual council meeting, and that's what I think Mr. Mayor Pro Tem was referring to, which was, what are the legal obligations, what are the requirements, and that is, again, something that the city attorney will provide to the council committee.
So we'll take a comprehensive look at all that at the committee.
And just a note, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll do whatever the council wants to do in reference to both. But I thought the purpose for kind of streamlining everything on Monday was to get us all in the building so we can communicate and talk to one another and do this informal networking. But again, I'll do whatever you guys want to do.
So, Madam Mayor, if it is appropriate, I would just move that we adopt the interim solution until we get this shaken out.
There's no adoption. I was just making a comment on,
I
on how.
And I think if we have to adopt something tonight, we'd have to have a unanimous vote to adopt it, so why don't we just get this quickly done on Monday and see if we can just move from there?
So we're not going to vote on the council regular meeting schedule?
We are.
We are, the committee, Budget and Effective and Intergovernmental will make a recommendation and bring it back to the dais. And then we'll raise our hands and make a decision.
So to that end, there's already a motion then to accept this. I would just make a amendment to the, or propose an amendment to the motion to include this virtual option for the committee meeting, because it used to be part of what was written here. And so the motion that's already on the floor is already on the agenda. So
Make sure that I say this correctly, and I'm going to ask the city attorney. I don't have the state law in front of me that talks about what the state requires for council meetings.
I'm not talking about council, I'm talking about committee meetings.
Okay, well, go
Okay,
for
all
it.
right.
Because we do have a closed session
Yeah.
after this.
So what I believe that the Mayor Pro Tem was saying is when you approve this, you will have committee meetings on Monday. I believe what the city attorney was saying, your existing rules allow you, under certain conditions, to attend those virtually. So you wouldn't have to vote on anything or change anything, just your existing rules.
That's different than what he said.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I was asking you. Did you mean it under what was existing, or did you mean for any reason? You said just call staff.
I thought that was what the committee was going to decide and recommend if there's a change to it, I think.
Well, the committee wasn't going to talk about committee meetings at all, it sounds like. They were only taking up council. So what I'm saying is I'm moving at this point, unless the motion's already on the floor, I'm entering a substitute motion to adopt this meeting calendar with the inclusion that committee meetings at this point can be virtual, which is consistent with what he said in the interim until the budget committee finishes their work. That's my motion.
So
All right, okay.
I just wanted to respond to Ms. Watlington. So this schedule right here that we have, it does not include committee meetings.
Yes.
It just includes council meetings. So it's like 4 Mondays, and it just talks about the regular evening meetings. It doesn't talk at all about the committee meetings.
Understood. That's why I made the motion that I
So we
did.
have to have unanimous support to put something that's separate from the calendar.
Point of order, I would say that it's not a separate thing. I'm amending the motion that's on the floor that is part of the agenda item.
Committees aren't on the agenda item for the calendar.
Right, but the motion that I'm making is to adopt the council meeting agenda with this adjustment. That's the change that I'm moving to make.
Mayor,
Okay, yes,
the
Mr.
motion
Drew?
is silent on the subject of virtual meetings. All this says is these are the times at which the meetings will take place. I think that's something we can agree on without prejudice to the question of virtual, and I think we should await the outcome of the process that's been proposed for that. This doesn't talk about virtual meetings, and that would be something new to be introducing at this point. This talks about when the meetings take place.
Okay,
And I
so
think we should just do that, agree, that I don't think there's controversy about that, and let this process that we've talked about run its course.
I appreciate your position. I've moved, there's a second. We can vote it up or down, and I'm fine either way. We can move on.
Is there any objection to adding that motion to the item, to the agenda item
I'm
tonight?
sorry, Madam Mayor, I just need clarity on what's happening right now. I mean, okay, so not to make us go through this all over again, I just need to understand the motion that's currently being put on the floor with specificity, please.
The motion originally is to approve the amended 2022 City Council meeting schedule.
Right.
That is what's in front of.
Okay, so that's what
on the
we're
agenda.
talking about right now.
Right, and
Okay.
then Ms. Watlington has made a motion to add to that the council committee meetings for virtual operation, which requires a unanimous vote of this council to add to the item.
Well,
to
point
the
of order, I
agenda.
don't believe that's the case.
Yeah, so I think the issue, and let me go back to the Mayor Pro Tem's statement about the virtual meetings, because right now, doing virtual meetings for the committee meetings would not be consistent with Rule 28A. So but I've heard various things from this council that you wanted to have virtual meetings, but I'm not sure, maybe I shouldn't assume that that's what you're saying. I assumed when you said that was the consensus of the group, but I'm getting the sense that maybe some folks don't know that.
And I guess that's what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and do it cleanly, and if anyone objects to it, then we know it's not the consensus of the group.
Right, I understand that, but what you're saying is objecting to having the vote versus you vote, and if it's not the consensus, it'll be voted down.
And if I can just add from a procedural perspective, because the issue of committee meetings was not on the agenda, the request to add is fine so long as there's not an objection to that and there's a unanimous agreement to add this discussion to this agenda piece. And that's only because the particular item in front of you just speaks to council meetings and not committee meetings. So I think that the statement that was introduced is the issue. And if you want to clarify that, if it's unanimous for the council to clarify that now, because the committee meeting piece wasn't part of your printed agenda, that's fine for the if there's a unanimous consent to clarify the committee meeting piece. And that's really the question that's in front of the council now is there unanimous consent to add that? And if there's not, then it couldn't be added tonight. It need to be brought to a subsequent meeting.
So that's what I was asking. Is there unanimous support to add the motion that Ms. Watlington made regarding the committee meetings to this agenda? So,
Can I?
yes.
I have a question. On August 22nd, Ms. Watlington asked for this to be on the agenda on today.
That is true.
And that didn't happen. So can we get clarification why that didn't happen?
So it's basically what's happening right now. What is this? And so what is it that council wants to have a discussion or a vote on? I guess the one thing that I'm a little confused, and I thought this is what the Mayor Pro Tem was saying, but I'll say it for myself. I just thought the existing rules did have a provision for committee meetings in a virtual option with like 48 hours notice or something like that. And so I thought what the Mayor Pro Tem was trying to say is, guys, don't worry about being here on Monday in person if you have something that's consistent with one of the excuses, for lack of a better word. But if there's nothing that exists, then I think about that differently then.
And that's a great point. And I think that's the issue, because the current rule says by reason of illness or injury. So there is this qualifier, not just I'm going to participate virtually, but by reason of illness or injury. That's the issue.
And I guess what I've been struggling with is I thought that we were all okay sending it to committee. And I think that we've asked them to come back and give us a report on this and make a recommendation. I think that the difference has been whether or not tonight we would, I can't remember if the motion, Ms. Watlington's motion, was to add council meetings to that as well. So it's to add the committees to this meeting right now.
Yeah, I was just trying to codify, if you will, what my impression of what Mr. Winston said was. That was why I asked the question, because the qualifiers exist in the rules of procedure.
Okay, so let me go back and try this again one more time. We have a motion to amend the 2022 City Council meeting schedule. Why don't we handle that action? And then we know that we have a plan. And then I think it might be good, and we talked about this a little bit, the Mayor Pro Tem and several of us today, about the idea of how do you get enough comments among yourselves to get things like this so that we know we have a foundation for the discussion or request to have it on an agenda. So maybe that's the thing that we need to do. We're sending to the minutes, the committee, the current rule on committees that states it as it is for review by the committee. Is that correct? Does everybody have that common understanding?
Yes.
Right now, for virtual meetings, committees have two functional type words in the section, rules. And so we're going to have the committee give some idea. I think what Ms. Johnson has said, that is a question for also council meetings, and I think that's where we have to make a decision. Is there agreement among the council that you want to have virtual meetings for that. And what I don't know is what the law says or what's legal in North Carolina. So I would prefer that the city attorney give us some kind of guidance on that and what the ideas are and what they are before we start talking about that at some point. So it's council. So I'm going to go back and ask you to, we've discussed the motion that's on the floor, which is to amend the city council meeting schedule. So can we just get that?
Point of order, my motion was seconded. My motion is the one that's on the floor right now. So we can either vote that up or down and then get back to the original motion, but the motion that's on the floor is the one that I presented.
Would you restate the motion on the floor, Madam Clerk?
I did not get the motion or who seconded the motion, but.
It was Councilmember
seconded.
Johnson.
Oh, okay, I'm
Do
sorry.
you have the motion?
The motion that Ms. Watlington made, one moment. Was to add the wording to this particular action under consideration for virtual participation in committee meetings until the matter has been resolved at the committee level.
Okay.
Could I hear that again, louder, please?
Can you say it
The
again?
motion was to add the wording that would allow for committee meeting that's being held on October the 3rd to be held virtually until it's resolved at the committee level. To add it to the existing motion was my understanding.
Correct.
The October 3rd meetings,
Until it's resolved.
Committee
Until
meetings.
it's resolved.
right?
And the assumption is you're taking it up on October 3rd? Is that, I'm asking.
That is one of our agenda items. Yeah. So we already have a lot in our agenda. Hopefully we can get through it all on day one.
Well, we can take, the only reason I asked is because she had included October 3rd, but I'm fine taking it out.
I would suggest not put a date because we already have 2 items or 3 items that we need to get through, so.
Okay, let's call, I have a motion. This is a request, and a call for the question can be done right away. So the question is, the motion that we have is to approve the 2022 City Council meeting schedule, adding the wording to this action under consideration to allow committees to be held virtually until resolved. Okay. All right, so all in favor, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, do we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Okay, that passes. And then we'll look for something.
And those opposed?
And those opposed, please raise your hand if you were opposed. Mr. Graham? Mr. Driggs, I didn't see.
He came to the dark side.
Okay, okay, and Ms. Molina. Okay.
And is Councilmember Ricari considered a yes?
He's a yes.
He's a yes.
I just, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I feel like as a new council member, the one thing that I wanted to be very specific on, because again, I don't want to be divergent from the council at this point, but I would like to know, and I think I even said this to Ms. Johnson, what parameters are we setting from a legal perspective? I would like to know, and again, I don't understand. I've been here 3 weeks, right? So I would have liked to have more information around what we're doing and why, and what that precedent is, and does this even set a precedent for the council meetings at some point, or even just to better understand it. And so at this point, I feel like I don't really understand it, and that's why at this particular moment, I can't say that I would fully support it, because I don't really understand what we're doing, the legality, or anything that's associated, and what precedent that we're setting by saying yes to it at this moment.
Yes, and I think that Ms. Ashmira understands the weight of what you just said, and we'll have a recommendation, and we'll come back. And it could be the motion that was approved tonight, it could be a change in it, it could be whatever that committee, with the advice of the city attorney, can recommend as appropriate and legal. So I think we'll have more discussion around this. For tonight, it is what it is, but there will be the opportunity to have a fuller discussion. And so did I
Thank you,
Ms.
Madam.
Ajmira, did you understand that's where we are? Okay, so that is item 19.
Wait a minute.
At least you were there last time we had these conversations.
Ms. Mayfield.
Okay, so we just voted on the amendment. We still need to go through the actual
No,
motion.
No, it was added to the item to approve the meeting schedule.
Okay.
That's what, it was specifically to add that wording.
21.
All right. So the next item is the city council is making appointments to boards and commissions. You voted by ballot, submitted to the clerk. So we have appointments. The clerk will read the will now proceed with announcing the result of the ballots for the Arts and Science Council Advisory Committee and appointments to the Charlotte Equitable Development Commission.
Yes, Mayor and Council, for the Arts and Science Council Advisory Committee, Nakia Savage was appointed. Also, Friday Jones was appointed. For the Charlotte Equitable Development Commission, Nadia Anderson was appointed.
Okay. Now, City Attorney, if you would give us our language for our closed session.
I'm sorry. Yes, I need a closed session for attorney-client communication in the matter of Asfaha versus City of Charlotte, pursuant to NCGS 318.11A3.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. And a second? All right, all in favor, raise your hands. All right. Can I have a motion now to say that we will adjourn at the end of the closed session? Can we do that now?
You can do that now. Typically, you just do it in CH 14.
All right, we're going to go in the back room today, not go back upstairs, okay?